begin with the roll call.
Governor,
Yes, here. Who's on the last one?
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Yeah,
we
gentlemen,
have-
you are.
We have a full quorum. I'd invite anyone that cares to join us in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is the presentation of the DMR Director Search Committee report. Reese?
All right. Thank you, Governor, members of the commission. We are pleased to present the final report of your DMR Director Search Committee. Just reminding the commission of who served on your search committee. You each had one of your staff appointed to the committee, as well as myself. Also had Justin Craigstead with the Pipeline Authority, and 2 representatives from the Oil and Gas Research Council, Preston Page and Zach Weiss. We held 11 public meetings throughout the course of the process. We began our work by going through a procurement process where we selected Prang and Associates as out of Houston as our search firm. We also developed an ideal candidate profile and selection criteria for the position and posted the role for 6 weeks. We created this matrix, which I've also included in your binders in case you'd like to refer back to it. This is what we included in the job posting, just laying out what types of experiences and characteristics the search committee recommended for consideration for an ideal candidate for the role. And we broke it out by several that were clearly must-haves and then several as well that were nice to have. The role was also posted during the petroleum conference in May, and our search firm attended the conference and engaged with attendees at that conference. Just some key stats of the work of your search committee. 103 prospects were contacted throughout the process. Out of those 103 prospects, 16 officially submitted applications for the role. Your search committee vetted those applications and selected 5 semifinalists to interview. And of those 5 semifinalists that we interviewed, we're pleased to recommend 2 finalists for your consideration here today. The 2 finalists are Nathan Anderson and Kevin Connors. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about your search committee work.
Any questions for Reese? I'll just say on behalf of the commission, thank you to you, Reese, and others everybody that served on the search committee. I know Jace is here, Zach is here, others that were on that, but great job on getting the word out about this important position, and great that we've got a large pool of interest and that we had a significant number of applications, and thanks for interviewing the semifinalists. And I understand we've got 2 strong finalists today, and this role is so important that we're pleased that we're in a spot today where we get to move forward with the finalist interviews. Any other questions or comments for Reese?
No comments, thank you.
Okay. Want to describe the process here before we get the first candidate in the room, or is there a...
Yes, happy to. So in your binders, you will note 2 attachments, one for each candidate. We also drafted potential interview questions if you so choose to use them. We would start with Nathan Anderson as the first candidate. After the interview, we're planning for a 5-minute break for you to stretch your legs, and as we kind of transition to the second candidate. And then after the 2 interviews, we would move for some time for you to discuss the candidates and interviews.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome. Hey, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We haven't met, but I'm presuming you're our first candidate.
Yeah.
Nathan, thanks for being here, and congratulations on being one of the 2 finalists from this important process. If you're ready, we'd like to just jump right in.
Ready?
Okay.
All right.
I see you've got some material there. Is anything that you wanted to say as an opening comment, or?
Yeah, here, this is just for each of you, and then whoever else would want one. It's similar material that I presented in selection as well, but just some information about myself and cover letter.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, congratulations to land on an incredible career. career and the legacy that he left in North Dakota. I certainly appreciate everything that he's done. I just want to congratulate him first and foremost. But my name is Nathan Anderson. I am a native of Minot, North Dakota, and just up the road a couple hours, I went to NDSU. Like my daughter would say, I graduated in the late 1900s, and I entered the industry right after that. Moved to Colorado. I have been in the industry for 25 years. There's been a little bit of misinformation that I've seen in the media. I just want to make sure that I clarify that I have 25 years of industry experience. But I appreciate being here, and just am honored to be part of this. I started in the service sector and was in the service sector of our business for about 4 years, developing hydraulic fracturing technology. And after that, I quickly moved into an operator role and worked in the field as a field engineer, and worked my way up through the ranks over the years. But during my time in the service sector, I worked in the Bakken early on in the Bakken, 2005, 2006. With the company that I was with prior to Chevron purchasing PDC Energy. So I have a strong understanding of the industry. I've worked many basins across the United States, and I have a good understanding of industry regulation throughout multiple states as well, which I think would serve me well in this role. And also other new technologies such as carbon capture and sequestration, technologies like that. But again, I'm honored to be here, and I look forward to the day. In a recent search that I was doing on the NDIC website, and I noticed upstairs in the waiting room, I noticed the saying, "Empower people, improve lives, and inspire success." And on the third page of the information that I provided you all, I have what's my leadership statement. The reason that statement resonated with me is because it's very similar. So thank you. That's my opening statement.
Great. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm sure that either Karen or the committee has explained that part of, due to state law, there's a little unusual in these finalist interviews, which this is a public meeting. And so in addition to the people that are here in the room, it's also available online for anybody that may want to be watching. So just make sure we understand we're in an open public meeting. The second thing, in addition to congratulations on being one of the two finalists, we appreciate you jumping in, because we know it takes courage to jump into a process where the finalist interviews are done in public, and we know that there are many people that maybe chose not to be part of this. So thanks for having the courage to put yourself forward in this way. I think that you mentioned Lynn. He was been in this role for so long. He kind of defines what that is, and many people have said, "Gee, this is a challenging role because of its sort of dual nature." We don't have an industry to regulate if we don't have capital and companies and talent that come here to actually develop the resource. And Lynn, over his decades in this role, managed to figure out a way to be one of the biggest cheerleaders for development in North Dakota, and was, in telling that story in a factual way, helped attract the capital and the companies to get here. But then with that, never compromised himself as a regulator. And be interesting with your 25 years of experience, if you looked in at North Dakota, the Bakken, its growth, the development. You said you started out here early, but how does this mission of this particular role resonate with you, that you'd say, "Hey, I want to be in that. I want to be in that job where I've got this, where I'm the top regulator, but I'm also have to help make sure that the engine of growth continues," because I think we're up to now about 2/3 of the revenue that comes into the state are somehow related to the oil and gas industry. So this is a very critical position.
Yeah, I guess I would say, if you're asking me, looking into North Dakota's energy future, I would say that 100% North Dakota will have a seat at the energy table, and a front row seat at that. I recently heard a statement from an executive of a large multinational company saying that energy demand in the world will increase by double over the next 30 years. And North Dakota, 10% of the oil production in the United States. It's one of the two oil basins, in my opinion. in the United States, and about 1.5% of the oil in the entire world is produced here in the state. So North Dakota will have a front energy growth in the world, and I think it's a pro-business state. It's generally a pro energy industry state. I would be a pro energy industry regulator, and I believe when you look at the demand doubling over the next 30 years, that's probably going to have to come from all sectors of the industry, not just the oil and gas industry, but there's coal and all the other sources of energy that are produced here in the state as well. So I think the future is bright for North Dakota in the energy industry.
We would agree with that. Tell us, just maybe connect a little bit with go a little deeper on your 25 years of experience and how you think that would relate back to using those skills and experience in this particular role as leading DMR.
Yeah, I graduated with a geology degree from North Dakota State. I have been a trained engineer in the industry, so I would say that the two skill sets kind of worked well for the smaller company that I was with early on. But I started in the field. I love the field, and I think the field staff across the state. I know there's a lot of jobs in the state that are in the field, so it's incredibly important. I worked through the field into field engineer positions, staff engineer positions, moved into asset manager positions, asset director, and then most recently a senior asset director over multiple basins. Colorado, Piceance Basin, Western Colorado, which was a gas field, Utica Shale in Southeast Ohio, and then most recently in West Texas in the Permian Basin, on the Delaware side of the Permian Basin, being the senior asset director for that asset. And I think those experiences, both from a regulatory standpoint, operational standpoint, leadership standpoint, all fit relatively well for the role. I have been in the industry for, like I said, 25 years, and I look back on that career thus far, and I really, when thinking about this role, I think that was a great training ground for potentially being able to serve the people of North Dakota in this role.
Drew?
The role itself is certainly different from private industry in a lot of ways. One of which is that you're reporting up through. There's a board structure, and then obviously the Industrial Commission. Tell us a little bit of your understanding of the governance and experiences that you've had that might help shed light on our understanding of how you would approach your work with the different entities, and including the legislature and other bodies.
When I look at the position, I think the Oil and Gas Division and the Geologic Survey are both roll up underneath this. The Oil and Gas Division is one that I believe would come naturally to me. The Geologic Survey and other entities I would need to get up to speed on. I think I can adapt and do that fairly quickly. It's my understanding that the position reports to the commissioners. I'm not 100% on that though, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my past experience with regulating is that I come from the private sector, so I don't have past experience being a regulator. I have been in hearings specifically in Western Colorado and Piceance Basin, Ohio, working with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Within PDC Energy, I was on the executive committee for 401k investment committee and the charitable contribution committee, so I have experience there. I presented to PDC's board of directors many times, and the C-suite of that company as well. So those are some of the things that I would say help prepare me for this role.
Yeah, I mean, you instantly come across and you're comfortable in a setting like this, and it's obviously we'll have meetings every month, and we get those reports up through, but obviously working closely with all the staff and the people, it's important. So you've been regulated, not regulated, or
Correct, yeah.
But they're different sides of the same coin, of course. Do you see any difficulty making that move?
I've thought about that a lot over the last 3 months or however long the process has been, and I would answer that with every position that I've had along the way, I've had to adapt to a change, whether it's working in Ohio, working in West Texas, working in North Dakota, working in Colorado. And, you know, I'm fairly comfortable with my ability to adapt to those changes. Comfortable with that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I have the regulatory department or the manager of the regulatory group for West Texas did report up through me in my prior role. So I have experience with that position, but again, from the operators.
Well, I'd never run the lottery before I became Attorney General, so there are things you approach, but you certainly have a really, thanks for all the materials you've submitted. You have a very interesting background, diverse experiences and perspectives, so we appreciate that. You've done a good job setting that material out before this interview today.
And maybe along those lines, you know, that multidisciplinary talents that one has to possess. And you kind of referred to it already, but within the departmental resources, you have the geological survey, you have oil and gas, you have all the underground injection well programs and paleontology. And there is some reporting, but there's still a lot that you have to oversee and have that oversight and help bring that stuff here and make sure it's certainly concise.
Yeah, certainly. I guess I would say to that, you know, I've led multidisciplinary teams in the past, and I've not been an expert in every one of the functions of each of those roles. So, been able to do that. I really think that when it's a true leadership role, that you don't necessarily know everything. You have to influence through leadership. So,
Well, and I think that's part of what you brought a comfort level is because that's where I was really going with it is what leadership skills do you have? What executive role have you filled in some of that? And I think you've kind of touched on that. I like the fact that even internally when you're doing, there's a regulatory aspect to it because you still have to make sure there's compliance within the company all the way down and compliance with the law. So I would assume that probably would play a role in this and develop some of those skills. So
yeah.
I think you pretty much covered it just by some of the other answers and conversation you gave earlier.
Nathan, on the regulator versus being regulated, you got a glimpse at multiple different basins. There's not very few people that have been across the country
Right.
and seen as you have, but just give us your sense from the private sector of regulatory environment in those other basins.
Yeah.
What were there ideas that you think we should bring here, or were there stuff that you saw there that you're like absolutely that drove you and your everybody else at your company crazy and
Yeah.
wasn't adding any value, but it was creating cost?
Yeah, certainly that's a great question. I think I've had a front row seat for the last 20 some years at watching Colorado, for example, and some of the changes that have occurred there over the years and potential challenges that the regulatory climate has presented to the industry. So I've had front row experience with that. Ohio was a pretty industry and business friendly climate and worked pretty well. Texas, of course, is another one that I've been in. And most certainly, I think there's things that everybody can learn from that regulatory climate as well. And then, of course, North Dakota, I think, is a business friendly, industry friendly environment thus far. And, you know, it'd be my goal to keep it that way.
So would you say in your experience in watching Colorado is that they've actually been have a framework where they're driving capital and business out of the state?
Yeah, you know, a lot has changed in the industry over the years. Rigs have gotten more efficient. Frac crews have gotten more efficient. There's been just tons of efficiencies that have developed over the years. Some that have been born out of downturns in the industry. But I would say that the fundamental way that the industry was regulated changed probably close to 20 years ago, and it continues to evolve that way. But at one point there was 100, 150 rigs running in Colorado. Today there's 14. And I would say that the DJ Basin of Colorado, I think, produces probably 500,000 barrels of oil a day. And it has the potential to do a lot more, along with the tremendous gas asset that's actually on the west slope of Colorado as well. So with that, yeah, I've seen a lot of changes there.
one of the things that's driving capital to North Dakota is our ability to uh, permit the wells, organize the pooling for the storage areas for carbon, and then also manage the liability. Our legislature and DMR and executive branches have all worked really to create a great framework for that. What experience do you have relative to CCUS? Because that seems to be an important part of some of our investment, and sort of some of the investment relates to electricity generation, not just to oil and gas, but DMR regulates the CCUS portion of that. So tell us your experience and background there.
No, I don't have a lot of, good question. I don't have a lot of experience in CCUS. I've done the research. I've spoken with executives from other companies, specifically in Denver. They're actually working in, I think, Indiana, Ohio, those type of areas. I understand the framework of it, the facilities, generally speaking, that go into that, and that, North Dakota probably has a bright future for that as well. I mean, the coal generation, the oil and gas generation, natural gas plants, and, the ethanol plants in the state. So direct experience with CCUS isn't something that I have, but I think it's, again, something that I have the ability to adapt to pretty quickly. Yeah. And look, I say, this position is a leadership position, but it really is nothing without a great team. So if there's a good team in place, which I would assume there is, with based on everything that I've heard, that I think there's a bright future for that.
Thank you. Drew?
Why, I had a couple others want to get to too, but why this?
This role?
Yeah, why?
Well, again,
I mean, just at the heart of things, why?
I sort of mentioned this earlier. I've been in the industry 25 years, and I would, when I think about that, I would say that those 25 years have been tremendous. I've met tremendous people in the industry. I love the industry. I love the people. I love the work. The long hours, the late nights I've worked, and I almost feel that that's a training ground for the ability to come back home. I'm not local to North Dakota right now, but I was through my college years, and then come back home and serve the people of the state of North Dakota. Move my kids back. The opportunity for that, and really just serve the state in a role that it's really critical, I think, to the future of the state. I think Governor Burgum mentioned 2/3 of the tax revenue is based off that, and I most certainly think that that's critical. It's important, and there's a lot that will go into maintaining and potentially increasing that over the years.
Certainly, as a regulated entity over the years, you've got an appreciation for the technical nature of the work and the importance of strict adherence to compliance, regulatory oversight, all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about if you think that would be a shift going from, again, the entity that was dealing with it, maybe sometimes feeling irritated by, versus ensuring in the regulatory role that we are flying right, as they say, because it's a twin role. I mean,
I never felt too overregulated in the assets that I was in. So I certainly think that there can be that, but there also needs to be some oversight. Back in the early 1900s, back in the Northeast, they floated oil down rivers, which most certainly wasn't good, and that was their form of transportation. So certainly, if we didn't have some common sense regulation, that would be things like that would still be happening. So certainly think that.
understand balance. I mean, obviously, there's a balance. None of us wants to do ruinous things to the environment. There's a stewardship obligation that goes along with that, and that is why it's in that regard. We've got a lot of lawsuits going on right now against the federal government and regulatory overreach, and we mean it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to us when it comes through. North Dakota's got to fly right on these matters. It's serious, and
Certainly.
we need to understand that you've got a strong commitment to that, and you seem to recognize it's an important.
Yeah, most certainly. I think some of the things that have came through the federal system over the last few years, specifically the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act have been potential overreaches. And I think there needs to be a smart balance between all stakeholders. And when I say that, it's not just the oil company or the oil and gas service companies. It's everybody that's involved, all the way from somebody that works at the gas station where vehicles fuel up to CEOs from oil and gas companies. So there's a whole lot of stakeholders in the industry, and I'm certainly cognizant of where I'm at, and can appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Your, this role, as you're well aware, is very highly visible. There's an internal and an external component to it. You got to interact quite a bit with media, public, industry. How do you feel
Yeah.
that your prior experience has helped you in that? Because a couple things that you're going to get right in the middle of is not only speaking publicly with the masses, so to speak, but you certainly have the internal component and us.
Yeah, I would just say that make sure that you bring it down to the level of your audience. I'm comfortable speaking in front of boards as long as I'm prepared. I'm comfortable speaking in front of my former CEO. No real problems with that. I will self-admit that this is probably only my third or fourth interview in the last 24 and a half years. So it's certainly something that I feel comfortable with. So.
Thank you. That's what happens when you keep getting promoted and you don't job hop.
Right.
The interview.
Yeah, exactly. And then your company gets purchased.
Yeah.
You might not be comfortable if you're getting canned all the time.
Yeah, right.
I had a lot of experience interviewing.
Luckily, I haven't been there, but.
Professional interview.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a good thing. Have you testified in front of the legislature or done any type of that or hearings? You've probably been to hearings, but you'd never.
The hearings that I would have testified in were on the West Slope of Colorado, and they were typically related to us building roads and bridges in and around the mountains.
Okay.
Yeah, which
So
always required some type of a permit.
legislature.
The legislature.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just testified to a regulatory entity. You've never
Correct. Yeah, it would have been.
necessarily been where you had to run some internal meetings that kind of acted in that nature.
Right. Yeah, it would have been Garfield County, Colorado.
Okay.
Where it relates, Mr. Wrigley, when I thought a little bit more about your question, and one of my favorite things to do in North Dakota is spend time with my family on the lake, just up north of here. And most certainly, the last thing that I would want to see while doing that is an oil study down the lake. So I think smart regulation is very important. We can't allow that stuff, but we still have to be in a position to be able to promote the industry going forward. A little bit more on
Appreciate that. The political discussion of these matters publicly sometimes doesn't allow for the reality that we all face, which is there's got to be a balance between those, and they're both stewardship obligations, economic and environmental, and the costs and effects. But I hear you committing to not intentionally floating oil down the river. So.
Correct.
But it's a very real thing. It's not an easy job in that regard. A state like North Dakota, an energy producing state like North Dakota that has also blended that, obviously all the agriculture production and natural resources that we're so blessed in, maybe has a special spot in that mix, and having to find blend for both. Appreciate it.
Before we leave this sort of regulatory piece, you mentioned that you had a group reporting to you in Texas that was responsible for some. Maybe just expand on that and help us understand what that group did and what your role was in leading that group.
Yeah. So the regulatory manager for the Delaware Basin or our West Texas assets reported to me. It was her and some consultants that actually worked on the regulatory process for us, which was permitting, production reporting, those type of things that an operator would do here in the state of North Dakota to the commission. So that was really the role.
And going back to your early experience starting out in the Bakken, where you started out at the field level and moved through. I mean, you, from a regulatory standpoint, you understand the full life cycle of developing a well. And probably in great detail because that's where you started sort of literally on the ground.
Yep.
So then was it in that sense when you had regulatory reporting up to you and they're talking to you about the issues, where you feel there's a tie back to your ground experience and understanding all the issues that you're trying to solve and when regulations are working and when they don't?
I feel comfortable with understanding when regulations are working and when they're not. I will say that when I was working in the Bakken, I was a field engineer, so the regulatory aspect of North Dakota didn't report into me at the time. So,
Right. But you were doing the work following the regs.
Correct.
And you knew what worked or what wouldn't work.
That's right. Again, many of the states that I've worked have had, fairly reasonable regulations, with the exception of, just one or two. And a lot of times it's not necessarily the state regulations. At times there's probably federal regulations that can be pretty challenging on the industry as a whole.
Have you follow up on that? Have you interacted with those regulatory entities to talk about what the challenges are and what the unintended consequences might be?
So I was on the Ohio Oil and Gas Association Board of Trustees, and that was one area where I would have had the opportunity to do that, serve on a couple committees through that. It was a relatively pro-business, pro-industry state, so I don't recall having those type of conversations. I will say that I presented to the Railroad Commissioner of the state of Texas with some of my team while at PDC Energy regarding seismic activity in West Texas, and had the ability to do that then. And that was the three railroad commissioners that are in Texas, and I've met all of them and had the ability to do that. But like extensive regulatory experience is something that I would need to get up to speed on quickly, and I will own that about myself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nathan, you mentioned, this role being a leadership role and a team, but tell us about when you've led teams in the past. What are the key components of your leadership approach, and also, what role does culture fit in that, and how does a leader affect culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I know that you may not want to read it right now, but in here is my vision of leadership and teaming, and I created this roughly 15 years ago, and it hasn't changed a whole lot during that time. And this is the document that I mentioned about having a pretty similar meaning to the statement that you had. But I create an environment where we hire great people, effectively train them, build solid relationships, receive buy-in, empower people, create accountability to the goal of the team, which I believe is pretty important. Build a team on trust, giving employees ownership in their work, effectively communicating with them, being myself, being authentic and genuine, and treating them fairly, both personally and financially. And then the last line there is creating a culture of environmental health and safety, where all people are really empowered to ask why. And that's not just why being a negative question. It's really why to help improve. I've really been part of leading and building three, call it four really good teams. Peanuts Base in Western Colorado was a team that I came from a field engineering role, moved into, or a staff engineer role, moved into a district manager role. Took over a team of about 20 people and helped build that. I moved into the Southeast Ohio assets, and that was a grassroots effort to build a team with 0 employees to start. So that was a lot of fun. Built that team up to roughly 25 or 30 people. It wasn't quite the right asset for the company, so the company ended up divesting of that to another company. And then I moved on to the West Texas asset. We purchased some assets from a private equity company there. A very, very small team, less than 5 people to start. Grew that to when we had a 3-rig program, roughly 65 or 70. But this is me as a leader. This is what I believe in. I believe in being myself, being authentic and genuine, and building a team that's built on trust and creating a culture of innovation. I think innovation is critical to the fabric of any good organization. If you don't have that, I believe you become pretty stagnant. I think that's important, not just for organizations that have helped lead in the past, but going forward in this role as well. I believe in setting clear expectations, and another document that I've prepared, not prepared for this, but prepared this every year is my menu for success. And what that is these are the high-level goals that as a leader that I set forth for the teams that I've led, and they have both qualitative and quantitative goals in there, and some are in regards to the team. But I don't get really prescriptive in defining how I expect the team to do this, but I expect the leaders that have worked for me to be proactive in helping accomplish these goals, and follow up on it, set clear expectations, empower the people. Don't micromanage, and kind of stay out of the good people's way. So that's a lot of words for how I believe I am as a leader.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I also want to mention that I've included some engagement survey results, and you don't have to read it. It's probably too many pages long, but to read it in this meeting. But what this is a engagement survey of the last company that I worked for the year of 2022. And what it really runs through is that the company was about 650 people. So the group that I had, which is about 60 people, ranked the highest in the engagement survey under my leadership. So I'm pretty proud of that, and something that I take a lot of pride in, and hope to repeat no matter where I am in the future.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah,
For sure.
thank you.
Were there questions that our very able previous committee didn't ask you when you left your interview and you wished you'd been asked? I'm not trying to wrap this up here. I'm curious whether you left there that day feeling like there was some other information you also wanted to get across.
I would say no. The selection committee was great. Again, it's the first time that I'd interviewed with a government group, so it was for me it was really eye-opening and interesting. Those people that were in industry had kind of one group of questions, and those that had worked in the government sector had another group of questions. So that was fun for me to learn that and observe that. So I didn't leave there thinking that I was incomplete.
Is it fun interviewing in front of the entire public and media?
This is probably the first time that I've ever did that.
Do you understand why that is that way, though? Do you understand why do you think it is that everything's so open? We have these open meetings, everybody can come in and.
Yeah, I think probably at its simplest form, in my opinion, is it's taxpayer dollars that are funding a lot of the government activities, so they have the right to know. I thought on that.
And inform our judgments. I mean, and they do that. People call in and after meetings sometimes or other times.
Yeah.
It's pretty central.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to have an instinct once in a while to say, crap, if we could just get a couple of us together to talk about this. But you can't. The three of us get along very well, professionally and personally, but we've had zero conversations outside of these meetings. It's not permitted, and there's things that attach the staff to, and you have to really immerse yourself in that. That's another area that's got to be complied with.
Yeah. It would. I've thought about that as well, and in my prior roles, I've been able to shut the door and have a conversation with my boss and the CEO. And again, I'll just mention that I've been able to adapt to every situation that I've been in throughout my career, and actually excel at it as time goes on. So it would be something that I would have to own and get used to for sure.
Yeah, it's important. From the governor's point, it takes courage to apply for a job like this, that you're going to get it or you're not, but the public's going to know that you went after that job. And whatever, the same is true if you were selected for this job to go forward, you're going to be doing your work, and the public doesn't and shouldn't hold back when they have a different opinion about what we're doing and why, or something. I did a radio interview today, and I'll hear about from people, and it's just something you got to be comfortable with and realize it's not even adversarial. It's just part of the process. Yeah, and you get good input.
Doug?
Along the lines of leadership, you generally end up having to have tough conversations. And if you haven't been exposed to this, you definitely will be. You're gonna have people coming to you from industry that have a conflict of interest. Can you cite some examples as how you've had those tough conversations in the past? Because you may have to, in a very eloquent way,
I know.
tell them, that probably isn't going to happen that way.
Yeah, I would say that's happened. There's been times when I just, even friends in the industry, because we all have, I have friends in North Dakota in the industry and all across the United States, really. But in those situations, I've actually just said, I can't, I don't make me choose between the friendship and my career for my family. And that's kind of how I've addressed it in its simplest form.
Yeah.
So.
It's be challenging because I think, to your point, sometimes you have friends that come forward and ask you to do something, or hey, need some.
Yep. I guess I would say that, I've read the mission statement of the DMR. I've read the objectives of the department, and those would kind of be your overarching start to, or how the department has been led thus far. And if it's not lining up with that, it's probably not something that.
So you don't see yourself having a problem with enforcement versus compliance? There's compliance and then there's the enforcement.
The enforcement side of it, yeah. I really don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's probably not many oil and gas companies in North Dakota or in the United States that don't have some type of a violation in the past from the regulatory body of the state. So I really don't. I've worked through them on our end of the deal, both from a state standpoint and from a federal standpoint. Some of the greatest things that we've done as a company that I was with prior is were born out of a problem that we had with the federal government, and we created a team called Impact, which was emissions management team that we created, and we actually improved our flare rates by doing this from the 6% range down to the 0.4% range, which is great because now we're selling that gas and we're not flaring it. So it was an unfortunate situation, but out of it came something really positive.
Innovative approach.
Right, that's right.
One of the things that Lynn would bring to us, because there's, hearings would occur at DMR, then we have to make a decision which involves a yes or no. But often, if we concurred with Lynn, but then Lynn would go back and not just tell somebody yes and tell somebody no. He'd go back and say, well, it's no and, or it's yes and then there'd be a collaborative solution, particularly around, spacing units, and because this dual mission where we're trying to make sure we're maximizing the resource for the taxpayers of North Dakota, but we're also looking out for the correlative rights of the neighbors of those units. And having worked in these fields, you understand that balance. But you have any examples of what I'll call this post-decision work that goes on within DMR, where you're working with parties that were each coming in with a different point of view? They get an answer, but now the best answer might be a third solution, where people have to work collaboratively to try to come up and find a better way to achieve the goals of all the parties. Do you have examples of that internally at your company, or working with maybe with companies that were developing near where your resources were, where you had to work sort of across these boundaries to come up with a solution?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I would say mineral trespassing type situations, situations where we're trying to pool with another operator. Those are probably, situations where we would try to do a mini JV with another operator. It's a good question. Those are probably the ones off the top of my head, not like a specific one, but have participated in those on and off for many years. But
Well, maybe more broadly about other experiences in your leadership role. Any leader that's operating at the level you have has got experience in conflict resolution, and do you have an approach that you bring to that when you're trying to get opposing parties either on your own team or maybe other parts of the company?
Yeah, I'll go. That's a good question. Thanks for clarifying. I would say the situation in West Texas related to seismicity was one of those. It was really a data-driven approach. That was a situation where the state wasn't able to have the exact same data set that the oil and gas companies had, because we would subscribe or go out and set our own data centers up for that. But really a data-driven approach, and to that was the solution, and still is, my knowledge.
What are the, you've given us an insight, maybe I missed a bit about your views on team building and collegiality, all of those matters. If we went back and surveyed people that have worked around you as your colleague, maybe people that reported directly to you, what have you, what do you suppose would be the hallmarks for them? They say that this is the way I experienced him. This was his style, and this is how I think things worked.
Yeah, in here, I have actually that for you all if you'd like to review those at any time. But every one of these letters here either reported directly into me or reported into the asset that I worked on. Fair, empathetic, trusting, empowering, a lot of the things that are in my leadership statement. Caring, technically challenging, operationally strong. Those are some right off the top of my head, Mr. Reagan. But these letters are again all coming. I think I provided these to Reese and the selection committee as well. But, I've read all of them, and if you do take the time to do that, I would say that they all have a similar message.
At any role where there's been a long time incumbent in there, there's going to be naturally new person comes in. There's going to be a lot of testing by all stakeholders. It'd be completely contrary to human nature if that doesn't happen. It's going to happen.
Yep.
What's that like for you? You seem nice. You're probably very difficult in person, but you come across, you get an easy style to you. You come across well, but I choose to work carefully. But what about when, because you mentioned before, I guess the question was posed, what about when people ask you to do this, that, and the other thing? You'll find in public life, they don't ask a lot. They demand a lot. Yeah. And it becomes your job to not answer every demand, of course. So tell us about that, because that's not the easiest part of the job that you're seeking.
I guess the way that I want to answer that is that I come into a role with a new team with the goal to earn their respect, and then understand the processes kind of in conjunction with that. But first and foremost, to come into the department and meet the people on the team, earn the respect of those people, and be able to move forward that way. Because I really think that if you don't have that, it's going to be an uphill battle the entire way. Now, with respect to the question about prioritizing the demands of the public, there most certainly has to be that. I don't have an example of exactly how I would prioritize, public demand right now, but we'll most certainly utilize the team effectively. And
the public isn't monolithic. I mean, just all the stakeholders, the regulated entities, interest groups that have strong say, or want to have a strong say about how things proceed. There's not a monolithic force out there. It'll be coming from all directions, and you'll need to sit through that and deal with those demands insofar as communication component of what your role is going to be. Are you comfortable with that, or are you going to be pretty miserable after 6-7 months of disappointing? By definition, leadership, as they say, isn't prepared to inconvenience anybody. Isn't going to be leadership at all. So you're gonna have people that don't want to see you at the restaurant.
Yeah, leading in the oil and gas industry is my passion. So I love the challenges that come with that. And I love the successes that come with it as well. But to get there, sometimes that those challenges will be in place. I look at those as part of the job in this role. Again, I own that I've not been a regulator in the past, and would look forward to that challenge going forward.
Appreciate it.
Along those lines, and this question comes a little bit from what the governor and the attorney general had questions about, and you had answers for, but because this is a challenging job in many aspects, not just the external communications, but there's a couple different aspects to this. You're going to be scrutinized on everything you do. Are you going to be secure enough in your decisions and it's not being adversarial and it's not being bullheaded. There's just sometimes what the outcome is going to be, and these are the decisions you have to make. But along those lines, I want to know if you're going to be secure in that. But the other thing is, in the past, what resources have you tapped in when you've had to make those challenging decisions? Because I really like what we have now, and it went back to what the governor referred to. Lynn accesses his team, even us to a degree. He might have questions, but he accesses industry to try to come up with solutions, because there's nothing easy. And he's going to get picked on for it anyways. He's going to get all the blame. We're secondary in that situation.
Yeah, if you're asking if I would be secure in every single situation, I probably would say there's going to be situations where I'm not as confident in. But that is to me where the strength of the team comes in. In the past, that's what I've done. I've went to the team, went to other trusted industry people to find the right answers, or whatever the case might be. But the majority of oil and gas operational related challenges, I believe I have some knowledge on. Would be comfortable with the majority of those, but again, me or any other great leader in this country is really not a whole lot without a good team behind them, and I firmly believe in that. So
The only thing I'd add to everything in this job, and as public servants, people say it's thick skin that gets you someplace and you manage this. No, it's forgiveness.
yeah,
You can't develop a thick enough skin for all the stuff that gets thrown at you.
thanks for that.
Nathan, it's easy to lead sometimes when things are going great, and then harder when they're not. And 25 years, you've been through some boom and bust in the oil cycles. But tell me a little bit about your experiences during good times and bad, and what you've learned from going through those cycles.
I'll give one, the downturn during COVID. We had a 3-rig program. All of the funding got pulled, the capital funding got pulled for that, and was put into the very best, the highest rate of return projects in the company during that time. And it was not on the asset that I was in. So I had 40, 50 people almost immediately, about half of them drilling engineers, completion engineers, those people that were directly related to the operation were affected by that. Greatly. So, what we did actually was, kind of come together as a team. What can we do during these, however long this is going to last, this demand destruction that occurred during that period of time. And one of the most innovative things that our company did was create U-shaped laterals and drill multi-well, drilled the first really multi-well U-shaped lateral pad in the United States. And that didn't happen by trying to change the tires on the car while we were running 100 miles or driving 100 miles an hour. That happened when we when we shut down and we had to innovate. Some of the people on that team, luckily, we had a team that was busy in the other asset within the company, and some of them shifted over to that. But throughout that, we really actually kind of innovated. And every single downturn in this industry, you can look at the rig count in the U.S. and every time that we come back after that, after a downturn, we have less rigs running, less frac crews running, and production is higher. And so, even though nobody likes the downturns in this business, they are somewhat important to the innovation. So that's an example of question.
That's a really good one. One of your wonderful references here comes from Kathy Klava, who worked for you for 9 years. And she talked about you leading a team through one of the hardest situations and doing that with great strength, determination. Was that this situation, the COVID downturn, or was there a different one that she would have observed you?
I think that's probably one of them. Kathy, where I worked with her for a long time, but another one may be an injury, an oil field related injury that impacted a family. And that was another one. So it's probably one of those two. And doing that with empathy. It's probably that, but if it isn't, it's the other one.
But also then that maybe relates to your commitment and the teams you've led on the safety side of things as well.
Yeah, I would say that we one of the neat things that we did prior to getting acquired was kind of rebrand the culture, the safety culture, because we had such a good record. And in here as well, on one of the back pages is EHS performance over time, environmental health and safety performance over time. And as you can see, everything is trending down. But the challenge that I had with that is everything was trending in the right direction, but how do we stay on top? We were doing really, really, really good. So I brought the management team together, challenged them with the idea of how do we continue what we have and maybe even improve upon it. And what ended up happening is we rebranded EHS, the environmental health and safety culture, to a statement called respect in every action. And then we had items that related to that. And then we trained in the field. We went to the field, the leadership team went to the field and trained everybody. And we also challenged everybody to take the respect in every action theme that was created by the leadership team and stakeholders from the field and go train 5 others on that exact same thing within the team. And it didn't have to be people in the industry. It could be their children. It could be their sister or brother or somebody at the grocery store. It really didn't matter to me. I just wanted to spread the word of respect, what respect in every action meant to our company. And that was something that I thought was pretty successful. It's kind of a rebrand of, how do you stay on top when we were doing so darn good? You have to continue to innovate and think outside the box on ideas like that. And the team came up with a great plan there. And they're really stuck. And many of the field staff would email me saying, boy, I've not shared it with 5 people. I've shared it with 10. And to me, that was just incredible because they were comfortable with that. And more importantly, than just the respect in every action, the message is that I was hoping to create leaders from the people in the field, the engineers, the geologists, not just really everybody on the team I considered a leader, and bringing out their leadership skills to the highest level that we could. Yeah.
Creating the best student is to make them a teacher.
That's right. Yeah. There's a lot of people in the industry that are way smarter than me, so I have to rely on a few other things like trying to be a good leader.
Sorry, guys.
Brewer,
Those are the questions that I had.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the
I
discussion.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
think it was a good
Thanks.
conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nathan, would give you an opportunity for closing comments on anything that you think we might not have touched on, you think is important for us to consider as part of your candidacy.
I guess a question for each of you or one of you, whoever wants to answer it, is what do you
Drew
think?
takes all the questions.
Okay.
Talk to our lawyer.
What do you think are the largest challenges that this position in the DMR face, say just in the next few years going forward?
Clock. well, you're going to get different perspectives because we have different length of service here on the commission and everything else. But I will offer something up quickly on that. The regulatory environment is something that I heard about for years and heard through others immediately when I was lieutenant governor, knew more. It is a whipsaw, and the national politics might change it dramatically in a few months or might not. And the impact on the ground for that is very, very real. And then there's the litigation that's going on that sometimes changes it, hopefully for the better in real ways too. And of course, industry's having to respond to that, and then the obligations we all have to keep energy production where it needs to be for people's, not just their comfort by a mile. I wish it was just for their comfort.
Mhm.
So that's just going to be a challenge for anyone. That won't be different. But I see that as one of the challenges up ahead. And then just for anybody coming into this role, almost doesn't matter their background. That's going to be a recognition that in North Dakota, it's kind of uniquely crafted, both in its reporting, but more importantly, in the work that it does. It has industry promotional work, but regulatory work, the competing sometimes, but the necessity of blending the stewardship responsibilities is critical. And from my perspective, that's what I'm trying to assess as we go through this job search. Someone who's uniquely capable of handling both those, because not just the public, the three members of this commission share that profound, deep sense of those obligations existing together.
It was talked about earlier when Drew mentioned that not only do you have three different perspectives, you have three different members here bring different things to the table. So you may end up in conversations with us about different things. Maybe it's our attorney on one issue. Maybe it's the governor on a few other things that are dealing with the resource out there in the public. One thing that I would probably stress to you, and I know I've had these conversations with Lynn in the past, this resource out there, the land is shared by multiple people. You have agriculture that exists out there. Maybe they're only the surface. You have mineral owners. You have pore space. That's another aspect of this. You have a motoring and consuming public. There's so many things that I know I get calls about. And that's a balanced approach. And sometimes you have to tell people when they're pretty irate, pretty hot, that the mineral owner has a right to develop their resource. It's just having a very conscientious and reasonable approach to it. And that can, I know in that position, it's daunting at times, because the next thing they're going to do, especially if it's dealing with the land, it seems like I'm the next one they call, and then I might be calling,
Exactly.
So those are going to be some things that, I don't know, you're going to have some challenges there.
I would, at one point I spoke, trained the Groundwater Protection District in Omaha on hydraulic fracturing and the safety of hydraulic fracturing and how it is and could be safe and should be safe for groundwater. And this was a group that had kind of a stake in all of the Ogallala Aquifer across the kind of the middle of the United States. And that was an example of a time when I went into a meeting, spoke for an hour about hydraulic fracturing, and actually had probably 2 hours of questions afterwards from farmers, stakeholders, landowners regarding it. So it was kind of early on, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, something like that. So understand what you're saying. And I would say, a follow-up to something that you mentioned, Mr. Wrigley, was I do believe in a strong middle class, and reasonable energy costs is definitely a component of that. And if we don't try to keep natural gas, coal, all of the kind of the more reasonable energy sources reasonable for the American people, that's a challenge. So, and natural gas consumes, I think it's roughly a little over 50% of the electricity grid right now, which is great. But I'm a Colorado resident currently, and I've watched my Xcel Energy bill go up by probably 2 to 3 times over the last 3 years. And it has nothing to do with using more natural gas.
Yeah.
It's less. So that's where I am on energy sources.
To your question, Nathan, I would just build on what both these guys said, starting with what the commissioner said. We've got all these various responsibilities, but part of that is the state is actually the largest mineral owner in the state. Not any individual, not managed by this board, but and the state's also the largest landowner. So there's this nexus between different boards and different agencies where we've got a responsibility to develop it for the people of state, but also we've got a direct beneficiary as a mineral owner. But we're also, as a landowner, then we care about the land just like we do with the private land. We've got stewardship to take care of the state land, and just like what the commissioner was saying, and what Drew led with when you were sort of asking about the future and the impact. I mean, the federal regulatory thing is the biggest wild card in all of this. I mean, this is an industry that's literally been under assault through federal regulation on and off again. It was under attack for 8 years. It went away for 4 years. Now it's been under attack for 4 years in a more coordinated whole of government approach. And I think that we're pushing back on 30 different fronts right now. And it's not because we don't care about the environment. It's just that we know that a one size fits rule out of DC, it's not going to
Work for every state, every situation, and
No.
every.
And then relative to your job, part of why we have the success we have as a state is the gift that we have of our geology. And so the geologic survey component of this thing has been key, and whether that's identifying where we can do underground storage, like we've got the legislative directive to work on large underground storage for propane or other things, whether it's our massive CO2 storage capability, which is already enabling 2 of our ethanol plants to have basically a carbon-free liquid fuel product, which is way superior to us buying batteries from China.
Right.
There's just so many things, and then of course the gift of the Bakken itself and oil resources before that. I mean, our state's been blessed with amazing geology, and then the paleontology crew. I think with Lynn enjoyed that as much as we did when they come to our meetings and then, bring us 55 million year old T-Rex teeth or something. That's usually a highlight of these meetings, show and tell when you can bring that crew along. But there's an underdeveloped resource there in our state. Most states have a dinosaur state park. We've got a really active, dig program where people come from around the world. But that's probably, if you look out 10 years, there's probably going to be even more interest in the development of that as a resource. But we've been a little busy with the Bakken
Energy side.
right now. But anyway, there's a lot going on across that whole group, and as you said, we've been blessed that we've got great teams across all of those areas.
I agree.
Any other questions?
I'll just say thank you. It's an honor to be in this position as a finalist. And I'll thank the commission, the employees of the DMR. Well, certainly this is a change for them. The selection committee that I interviewed with, I did not think it was going to be about 9 people, and it was. It was actually a real good meeting. So thanks. And regardless of the outcome, I share a family cabin up on Lake Skakawea with my family, so I want the best for the state of North Dakota, regardless of the outcome of this decision. So thank you, everybody. And
I wanted to post a PS question. So Minot, did you go to high school in Minot as
I
well?
did, yeah. Great.
You're a magician?
I was a magician, yeah. I was in hockey, football, track, band, and those type of things.
Multi-talented.
Yeah.
And sports.
Yeah. So yeah, I
Thank
was a
you.
magician, then I was a bison for a few years, and graduated from there, and then entered the workforce. And when I left North Dakota and moved to Colorado, I kind of always had this vision of being able to move back to the state and someday, because I loved it. My father farmed up north of Minot on the family farm, and loved the state. Yeah. This might be a good opportunity for me to do that. So
Well, I made it through the whole interview without referencing that we were interviewing a Bison grad.
And I didn't hear anything about UND, so.
Right out of the gates.
Research-
You only lose about half the state with your answer, but that's good.
I'm a ticket holder to the DU Pioneers hockey, but I do that so I get the UND tickets
Yeah.
when they come.
Yeah, it's a good program too, though.
Correct.
Well, even before all that, it's not difficult. It's not difficult to see why you're here as a finalist for this job. I mean, you come with a wealth of experience, background, and how you conduct yourself too. So just want to add to the other comments. Appreciate that
Yeah.
very much. Thank you.
Works good. Thank you.
But we will reconvene the meeting of the Industrial Commission. We have a quorum here. We're in the middle of item 2, which is the Department of Mineral Resources Director finalist interviews. We welcome Kevin Connors. Thank you for jumping in and being part of this public process. Thank you and congratulations on being one of the 2 finalists, but also thank you for having the courage to apply because, as you know, in addition to people in the room, this is an open meeting. So any one of your peers, family members, friends, former team members, everybody gets to listen in if they want to. So we're great to have you here, and we'll kick it off with some questions in a minute. But we'd like to give you the opportunity if you'd just like to make an opening statement of sort of why you're interested, why you're here, and sort of what brings us to this point where you're pursuing this role.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I also want to thank the commission staff, the search committee, Prang and Associates. Actually, the process it was very helpful to have a well-defined process from the beginning in terms of understanding what to expect. So I'm really grateful to have that, and also very encouraged by the support I've received from the EERC, my current employer. And that organization is just a class act, so I can't say enough about them. They've made it very, very easy for me to be in this very public process. So very thankful for them. A little bit about me. I'm a husband and a father. I'm a man of God. I need to acknowledge God first and foremost, but I'm married. I have a wife and 7 kids. And we're
Congratulations.
This particular job is something I've been targeting for a long time. I look forward to walking through a little bit of my past experience and why I say that, but certainly today is a very big day for me to be here and to be considered for this position. I've had the opportunity to work under Lynn, to be mentored by Lynn, and to know him on a very personal level as a friend as well. So it's something that about 10 years ago, a little longer, I started to recognize that there would be a day where he would retire, and I started working toward this opportunity in terms of gaining the right experience, qualifications, and developing my skill set and leadership for this position.
Well, a clear path from there to here, so here we are. Having worked for DMR, you understand the importance of this role, and having worked with EERC in conjunction with many projects we're doing in energy to state, you've got an understanding. But just as a top line, we're approaching 2/3 of the state revenue being connected to activities related to DMR across that thing, and so. But maybe just go a little bit further on why did 10 years ago you decide that this was a mission that was interesting to you, or this was a career path that you really wanted to pursue? What resonated with you personally and professionally?
Absolutely. Maybe it'd be helpful to just start walking a little bit through my experience even prior to that. I started out, maybe it'd be good to point out that I have a bachelor's degree from University of Montana in geology. I started geology in Montana, met my wife there. We got married my senior year in college, and by the very end of December, we got married in September. By the end of December, we found out we were expecting our first child. So he's now 14, going to be 15 here in September. And that was really my start to, I would say, my understanding of the Williston Basin. Western Montana is a great place to study the Williston Basin, the formations that lie underneath our feet, and specifically in western North Dakota that make up the deepest part of the basin, were the same rock units that I was mapping and studying at the University of Montana. Graduated in really the summer of 2009, and by early January 2010, I got an opportunity to go to work for the oil and gas industry as a well site geologist. So I started my career living on an oil rig, and drilling horizontal Bakken wells. Very different time at that time. Working for EOG in the partial field, we were drilling 10,000 feet down, 5,000 foot laterals across angled across the 640 acre spacing unit with like a one stage frac. So very exciting to see that the industry over the course of just my career has really, in terms of innovation and really cracked the code in terms of developing the Bakken. It was in that time when I was a well site geologist where I met the supervisor, the district supervisor in Minot for the oil and gas division. He was the inspector of the rig that I was working on. And he started talking to me about a career with the oil and gas division and that there was an opening in the Williston district office. So I applied for that job and I was given that opportunity to be a petroleum engineer, somewhat of an entry level position with the state in their district office in Williston. The supervisor there at the time was John Axman. John Axman he actually received one of your awards in 2017 for his specifically the Landmark Award for his excellence in management and teaching. And so that was really one of my first mentors. He started teaching me about the oil and gas industry. I was a field inspector in the McKenzie County area. At that time, we were close, if not at, record number of rigs. I had about 20 oil rigs that I was following around in terms of my duties, in addition to hundreds of production sites, injection well sites. Got to really see firsthand in the field from my time as a well site geologist to my time as inspector. There was great expansion of the oil and gas industry in North Dakota, and I got to learn really quickly a lot of the challenges that the industry was facing. In 2011, the legislature created a new position called CCS supervisor, carbon capture and storage supervisor. And the goal of that position in the appropriation language was to apply for and obtain Class 6 primacy for the state of North Dakota. And that's where I got that opportunity. I applied for it internally, and I got that opportunity, and I moved my family down to Bismarck. In Williston, our oldest daughter was born. We named her Faith Dakota, because moving to North Dakota for me and my wife was really following the Lord. And we just had great faith that the Lord was going to provide for us in North Dakota. And that's really kind of an important piece for me in terms of North Dakota. I was young. I had a degree in geology. I was newlywed. We had a baby at the time, and I was looking for an opportunity to provide for my family, but to be with them every day. And that's why when I worked on the oil rigs as a well site geologist, great job, great opportunity. Actually, nothing better in my mind than drilling oil on American soil. Like it was something that was eye-opening for me, my first job in my career, but I was away from my family at that time about 25 to 30 days at a time. And it just wasn't working for my wife and I. So having a career with the state at that time was just a huge blessing for me and my family. So in 2011, we moved down to Bismarck. I started the multi-year effort of working with the Environmental Protection Agency, both the Region 8 office in Denver and headquarters, and in terms of working through the Class 6 primacy application. That's where I started getting opportunity after opportunity. Because of that role, we reconvened, and because of in terms of the goal and the effort to receive Class 6 primacy, we reconvened a ad hoc work group that was established in 2008. That's where the original 2009 legislation came from for geologic storage and the pore space law, that ad hoc work group. That was, at the time, it was Governor Hoeven had requested that group be formed. That group is the one that put forward what we have in terms of our statutes today, 3822, and the pore space law in 47 of the Century Code. I reconvened that work group, and that's where I started to see kind of the North Dakota model. It was government. We had the Department of Mineral Resources. We had the Attorney General's office. We had the Department of Environmental Quality, it was Department of Health at the time. And we had the industry. We had the oil and gas industry, the lignite industry. And I started to see how North Dakota really functions in terms of partnerships. That was my first view at that. At the same time, I was given opportunities to go present across the country on what we were doing in North Dakota, and also started working with the EERC for my capacity with the state. And it was introduced to actually the P-Corps Partnership, which is the program I manage today. I'll get to that. So that's where I started to see how we move forward in terms of that private-public partnership or that industry-government partnership, how we develop science-based regulations, how we how we work toward solutions to challenges. And that's really where I began to see that and develop that mindset. That that role gave me an opportunity to work through the rulemaking process, worked through that with, in terms of testifying before our legislative committees, our Administrative Rules Committee. And then also I was given a unique opportunity to be on a task force with the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, the IOGCC. And it was in that role where I started working with other state oil and gas regulators, other state oil and gas directors. And I had a couple of people that had been kind of taken to me, and I was, kind of somewhat of a mentoring relationship with them. And that's when somebody started to suggest that a couple of the guys started to suggest that, hey, are you gonna succeed Lynn when he retires? And that was pretty early on. And at that time I just kind of laughed it off and didn't really grasp onto it. But I kept hearing that over the course of my career. And about 10 years ago, I started to believe it. And to the point where making significant decisions, life-changing decisions, to have that right skill set and develop to where I could be today, sitting at this table. Again, that's why this is so important for me and my family. It's something we've been working toward for a long time. And I say we because we have made career moves. We've moved across the country. We've moved across the state of North Dakota, really to be positioned for where I am today. In 2013, North Dakota filed our application with the EPA for Class 6 primacy. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Maybe I kind of breeze through what that application is. It's a very complex application. And there's some very important components of that I could be happy to talk about. In June of 2013, we submitted our application for Class 6 primacy, and that's when there was an opening in the agency for what's called the UIC supervisor, or the Underground Injection Control Supervisor. That position administers the Class 2 UIC program for the state of North Dakota. At that time, that program had been established for 30 years. We got primacy over Class 2 in 1983. So very interesting. I went from standing up of the newest well class program in terms of the Underground Injection Control program to getting experience implementing and working for and implementing a 30-year program that's well established, right? Had great opportunities there. I maintained my CCS supervisor position. I maintained that role, although the duties had significantly been reduced since the application was submitted. And then over the course of that time, that was from 2013 to 2015, we had a challenge in the state of North Dakota in the oil and gas industry. We were experiencing what can be described as slow, undetected leaks of our specifically saltwater gathering pipeline systems. And there was a real challenge in the 2013 legislature. The legislature addressed it in terms of requiring all operators to submit EIS shape files to the state in a confidential database. But then we had the Blacktail Creek spill after that. And the legislature in 2015 increased the authority of the commission and the oil and gas division to stand up a regulatory program. And that's where I was given that opportunity. I was kind of watching it from where I was at within the agency. I don't think they were finding the right person to fill that role. And although I didn't have a whole lot of experience with pipelines, I stepped in. I did have experience establishing a regulatory program and going through the rulemaking process. Again, in that position, another partnership was formed. The ERC was through our legislative directive was developing a report, trying to find the issue that we were experiencing with these pipeline failures, and in that putting together a work group of industry and government. And I had an opportunity to participate in that. The iPipe program is one of the things that came out of that effort. And the other thing that came out of that effort was the establishment of a regulatory program for previously unregulated pipelines in North Dakota. That was a great opportunity for me. One thing I would say there, in that position and in my previous position with the Class 2 UIC program, I had great opportunities to work directly with landowners. A lot of issues, a landowner would call up upset. And I took those as real opportunities to try to educate and explain, okay, this is, I understand you're a site explaining what's going on. This is what the agency does in terms of regulation. And by the end of those calls, typically I could, have a very good relationship with that particular landowner. That only increased in the pipelines position. There was also issues with reclamation. I was working directly with the Ag Commissioner's office. We did town hall meetings where we went around and presented specifically on the work that we were doing in terms of our establishing this new program for pipelines that were previously unregulated. Our focus of that program was focused on construction and reclamation. And so I think today we can see that program has been successfully established. And I think so far we haven't seen the type of failures that we were seeing prior to the establishment of that program. And then 2018 came along, and I probably did one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. I resigned from the oil and gas division, and I went to work for Equinor. That wasn't an easy decision, but that decision was solely based on the fact that I felt like I needed to have some additional experience. I remember it was a very difficult conversation I had with Lynn at the time, but he understood it. And the reason I made that decision, in a way, was I wanted to be sitting at the other side of the table. I needed to understand industry's perspective. And so that was the decision that I made, moved my family down to Texas and went to work for Equinor. Now, you can see I only spent a very short time with Equinor, although I think I did have a very positive impact on that organization. And what I can say about that is I got in there and I just didn't see the level of leadership that's important to me. And they seem to have other priorities in terms of developing Bakken. And I think we can see that today. They sold their Bakken assets shortly after I had left to Grayson Mills. And so anyway, during that time when we were in Texas, I realized it wasn't the right fit. And I realized I needed to come back to North Dakota. And that's when I got this opportunity with EERC. It only meant that after 7 months of being in Texas, I had to move my family back to Grand Forks, which we were all on board for. And the experience that I was looking for in 2018 when I left the oil and gas division with industry, I know that today I'm very confident that I got that experience plus some with the EERC. With the EERC, I wear several different hats. I manage the P-Corps partnership, or the Plains CO2 Reduction Partnership. It's the longest standing research and development program at the EERC. EERC has been performing applied research in CCS and CCUS for over 20 years now. That program began in 2003. It was previously managed by my CEO, Charlie Gurecki, and one of my other former leaders who's now retired. So that program is a very important cornerstone type program at the EERC, and I took that over about 4.5 years ago. And under my leadership, that program has grown. When I took it over, we had about 150 to 125 partners. Today, there's over 250 partner organizations, mostly industry partners and government partners. And also, that program gave me great experience in managing a major research and development program. So when I look at this Department of Mineral Resources director position, where you're regulating the oil and gas industry and managing oversight of this geological survey, I feel like my regulatory experience and my experience managing large research programs at the EERC certainly fits very nicely with that. So at the EERC, I also work directly with our commercial clients and provide regulatory advisement. I certainly provide that perspective. And that's really where I've been able to develop my strengths in terms of my leadership. And I'd say one of my biggest strengths is taking the framework that's established, the administrative code and the statutes, and understanding the regulatory program, and then applying it to commercial projects. I mean, it's a real art to do that, and that is definitely one of my strengths. And I think that's very fitting for this DMR director position. Typically, you'll have industry come in, want to develop a project a certain way, and one of my strengths is certainly understanding the framework from which we're working and guiding or providing some sort of recommendations or how to be compliant with the administrative code and with the rules and regulations. I would like to I'll finish up here with just a couple more things. In 2018, I wanted to sit at the other side of the table. When I worked for the DMR, I had an opportunity to testify before the Energy Development Transmission Committee, Administrative Rules Committee. At the EERC, I've testified before the Minnesota legislature, the Alaska legislature. When I was with the DMR, I got an opportunity to work through the rulemaking process and permit projects. When I'm with the EERC, I've had an opportunity to take the administrative rules and put together permits for projects, represent companies before the oil and gas division at the oil and gas hearings, sitting at the other side of the table when I used to sit on the oil and gas staff side of the table. Work directly with industry, learning their perspective, and then in addition to that, with the IOGCC, I continue to work with the IOGCC. I've gained the respect of the other oil and gas directors that I would say would be the peers of this particular position. And then lastly, when I was with the DMR, I had the opportunity to review proposals for the lignite research program, the oil and gas research program. And at my role at the EERC is I've submitted proposals to those two programs and presented to them. So I really feel like I've achieved what I set out to achieve. Really dating back 10 years ago, and then ultimately in 2018 when I made that difficult decision to leave the DMR. And today I'm ready to return. If I'm the successful candidate, I'm very much ready to return and lead that department. And I, that's something I really look forward to, that opportunity if I'm given it.
Thank you.
You mentioned with Equinor that it didn't have the level of leadership that you were looking for. Tell us a little bit about that. What leadership styles do you what do you respond to? What would be your leadership style? And then also, you better dovetail into that about working with this commission and the staff of the Industrial Commission. How you view that? It's a pretty unique role. So those three, if I could, what's your leadership style? What do you respond to? You were referencing Equinor, I believe, and then also tell us about working with all of us.
Maybe to start with Equinor, it's probably difficult for me in the beginning. I went from being led by not only Lynn, but Bruce Higgs. I even had a chance to work for Mark Ford for a few years as well. So I had very strong leaders that I had direct access to and got to learn from. When I came into Equinor, it's a little difficult to say maybe in a public meeting, so I hope no one takes it personal, but it wasn't the right culture there. I came in terms of the leadership I was getting, it wasn't my direct supervisor seemed a little scattered in terms of what that individual wanted in terms of the team. I was able to step in and fill gaps, trust me. I was able to step in and lead. But there was a sort of a culture that was almost backstabbing that I was stepping into. And I recognized it pretty quickly. And so I don't know if you want to hear any further than that, but it was just an uncomfortable situation from the beginning. I worked through it for about 6 months. And at 6 months, I told myself, okay, at 6 months, if this doesn't get better, I got to go. And at 6 months, it did not get better. I did have a positive impact there. I worked with the asset team really well, worked through permitting projects with them, actually corrected some of their issues they were having that I discovered in terms of their production reporting and got them into compliance there. And ultimately filed actually their PHMSA annual report for them. Again, very, very positive impact on the Bakken asset team, great relationships there. But overarching, you had a company that went from Brigham Oil and Gas, Texas wildcatter, to being purchased by a Norwegian-owned oil company, very large international oil company. And there were some cultural things there that I think needed to be worked out. And ultimately, they weren't developing the Bakken asset like I had thought they would be when I got there. In terms of my leadership style, that is something that, I've really developed what I would call a shepherd leadership style. So really looking to know the people that work for me and under me in a way that I care for them, developing trust between myself and those individuals, and really looking to help develop. I come from a culture at the EERC where we are like laser focused on employee development and leadership. And I've really learned from that experience on how to develop staff. And in my opinion, as a leader, it takes meeting them where they're at, understanding where they're at, what their goals are, and try to develop them on where they're at. And that's something that I take great pride in. Want to certainly empower people to be able to do their work. But also, I've developed the skill set of delegation, and not only delegation, but clear communication. Communication is definitely one of my strengths. And so clearly communicating my expectation in terms of what I would like to see. But ultimately, what I'd say, maybe the last thing about my leadership is I really look for ways to set people up for success. And again, that goes back to meeting them where they're at in terms of understanding where they're at and how to develop them and giving them opportunities. I can think back on how I was given so many opportunities and to succeed, but I was also guided along the way. And I've developed my leadership after those that have led me.
Where we go?
Sorry, you asked.
Well, let me just a quick follow on to this, but give us a sense of the scale of the leading teams at EERC or a DMR, what size they were and how many people. And
Yep. My first opportunity to establish a team was at the pipeline program. That was a team of 10 individuals, 6 inspectors, administrative staff, and then GIS and web developer positions as well. And then at the EERC, today I have a staff of 6 individuals, and that's really the way our organizational structure is. We don't want to be managing more people than that, because we do want to have the type of relationship with our direct reports that fosters, if someone has if you give someone an assignment and they don't understand it, they can come to you and ask you. And but that said, the P Corps partnership has given me a great opportunity to manage across the organization. The ERC is about 275 employees today, maybe a little more. And the P Corps partnership alone, and I manage other projects in addition to that, but the P Corps partnership alone, again, a very big program. Over the course of my management of that program, it's a $20 million program. I've had over 200 people work directly for me under the management of that program. That would be technical staff, subject matter experts, from both sides of the technical part of the organization. We have a subsurface group, an energy systems group, and then we also have support staff, administrative staff, budget analysts, contracts, and all those individuals essentially would be working under me for that program and helping me with all aspects of the P Corps partnership. So in terms of the 100-person organization of the Department of Mineral Resources, I understand the structure of that organization. About 40 of those individuals are in the field approximately. I feel very strong about the experience I got at the ERC in terms of managing both field staff that'd be out in the field doing research and development programs, to highly technical, very talented staff at the ERC performing applied research, to the support staff that comes alongside of us. So, I think you asked a question about communicating with the commission.
Yeah, well, how do you do that role, and how would you approach it?
Well, that's I'm aware that there's kind of an open meetings considerations with the commissioners.
It's more than kind of.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to say that. There's open meetings considerations, and so what I would, if there isn't some sort of communication protocol, I think that would be very, very helpful to understand how the 3 commissioners would like to have communications come forth for you to have the information you need to make the decisions you need. I know that in terms of the Department of Mineral Resources, there's an assistant attorney general that's assigned to the agency. So I would certainly think working closely with that individual to provide your department the information you need would be very helpful. And then working closely with Karen and Reese and the other commission staff, I think would very much be a way we would communicate. And then working the same as with the agriculture commissioner and his staff as well. So.
Yeah.
So I know you're familiar with this, and you don't have to dive real deep unless you think there's something relevant or pertinent, because you talked about it already. But within the Department of Mineral Resources, you have Geological Survey, you have the Oil and Gas Division, you have our paleontology programs, and the resource that exists mainly in the central and western part of the state. And then we have the underground injection. What makes you the best candidate based on your experience to manage and deal through all of those different multi-level disciplinaries that exist? Just can you cite an example or give me some indication of where that places you? Why do you believe you're the best candidate for that?
Absolutely. I believe I've developed that specifically over the course of my entire career, but specifically within the EERC. You know, on a day-to-day basis, I could be answering questions on a specific issue with related to developing salt caverns for salt cavern storage, and so the regulations around that and the challenges potentially that we would foresee with developing a salt cavern. When I could then be working directly with some of my staff on how to meet a specific requirement for permit applications that we're being hired to develop for carbon storage. At the same time, working on a research project looking at the Inukara Formation as it sees pressure in certain pockets as there's around saltwater disposal, and at the same time looking at enhanced oil recovery of the Bakken and carbon management and how, you know, how much CO2 we, you know, how we see the build out of the infrastructure today focused on saline storage with getting future CO2 to the Bakken, and at the same time looking at gas storage and potentially providing a pathway for like a petrochemical type company. So what I'm saying there is I saw this when I was with the DMR and I was aspiring to be considered for this position. I saw the way Lynn had to switch gears throughout the day to deal with these different to deal with all aspects of the DMR business. And so therefore, I really worked hard to try to position myself to be able to have that skill set where I could shift gears from one thing to the next and be right there, understand where we're at to be able to help guide and make decisions. I hope that answers your question. That's something that I really worked toward, was having almost a variety of things in front of me that I could
Just learn some examples.
help guide and help make decisions.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I want to just lead with a thank you, because obviously with under now Senator, then Governor Hoeven's leadership on CCUS and achieving primacy has been a big thing for our state, for sure. And you were there at the very beginning, so thank you for your contributions, because that's had a big economic impact across our ethanol and coal and other industries. But here we just give us since we don't need to sort of dive into your qualifications or understanding of that, it'd be interesting from a leadership standpoint. What do you, here we are in 2024, is this where you thought we would be when you were starting on this, more than a decade ago? And where do you think the upside is, and where are the challenges that we face in terms of us realizing the potential of our incredible geology that we have and our regulatory environment that allows us to use that geology, unlike almost any other state?
Absolutely. I might start with the latter part of your question and then kind of move to the former part. Where I saw this and where we were developing frameworks for, this goes back to that original legislation, actually prior work done with the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission on developing model statutes, model regulations that were ultimately taken by that ad hoc work group in 2008, customized to North Dakota's needs and adopted. And that was very much what you would call like a resource management framework. It modeled the way we approach CO2 storage off the way we regulate oil and gas, where right there in our statute, CO2 is a commodity for industrial uses like enhanced oil recovery, and the pore space is to be regulated like a resource. In other words, maximize the development of that resource. And that original framework actually modeled this idea of taking CO2 and storing it in the subsurface, but then storing it in a way that you almost create like a buffer, and then you're able to withdraw CO2 and send it to the oil fields. That was the original vision, and much like our gas storage industry is in the United States, where we have subsurface gas storage, and it's injected for storage and withdrawn for distribution, right? That was kind of the original vision. Obviously, today that looks very different because we have specifically a federal tax credit. There's also other carbon markets that require that CO2 to be permanently sequestered and not withdrawn once you store it. There's an incentive, there's a payout for that. And so it looks different. But I also think there's still an opportunity and still an advantage with that framework in place in terms of the incentive that requires permanent storage. Today, we very much see a golden opportunity for the state of North Dakota, for future generations of North Dakota, to build out the infrastructure with this particular federal tax credit. There's other carbon markets. I work closely with the trying to get projects from North Dakota in the California markets and the Oregon markets, work closely with those states as well. That further incentivizes CO2 storage in North Dakota. But there's an opportunity today to build out the infrastructure, build out the capture infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure. That CO2 looks like today is going to be permanently stored in, say the Broom Creek Formation. That's our primary target in North Dakota. But when that infrastructure is in place and when the Bakken is ready for CO2, that infrastructure is there to bypass those storage projects, those storage reservoirs, and just extend that CO2 into the Bakken. And that is the vision of that we're hopeful for in terms of where we are today, infrastructure build out, and having the 45Q tax credit be a major driver behind that build out. And obviously we're at the tip of the spear with industry trying to crack the code on how much CO2 to the Bakken, when does that CO2 need to be to the Bakken, need to be to the Bakken, and position our state to, again, what we're all working to do, which is maximize that world-class resource of the Bakken for not even today, for future generations. And that's really where I see myself being most impactful. That's why I'm sitting here today. I can be impactful for right off the bat, but I want to see the Bakken be developed. I want to see our oil and gas resources be developed in a way for the greater good of North Dakota citizens and the next generations. That's what's so important to me. And CO2 is that intersection. CO2 brings together our agriculture industry, our coal, baseload electricity generation industry, and our oil and gas industry. That's the intersection where carbon management brings that all together. And it is something that I think will allow us to continue to be prosperous as a state for multiple generations. That's the reason I live in North Dakota. Me and my wife moved to Bismarck this summer. I wanted to be positioned for this director position, but also in our decision making, we felt like our family is going to be in North Dakota, not only for our children, but the next generation and next generation after that. And that's what we're trying. So it's a personal thing and it's a professional thing. And I've kind of put them all together, right? So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You moved here even though you're still working for the ERC? Correct.
I'm a remote employee.
It's a long commute. How have others responded, and what would they tell us about your leadership style and how they find that? What would be the hallmarks if we asked people to write down a couple? It sounds like you've overseen a lot of people projects and what have you, and this certainly is a job that's going to require a lot of leadership skill and organizationally and strategically, etc. How do people respond to you, and what would they say about you?
Yeah, absolutely a tough question. But I really think that people would, when they look at me and when they work with me or for me, they recognize that I do genuinely care about them. I mean, that's something that I really am intentional about. I provide vision and guidance for those individuals. I tend to work with people to I want to see people succeed, and they know that. They know when they work for me or when they're working on a task for me or assignment from me, that I'm trying to position them, first of all, giving them an opportunity, and second of all, seeing them succeed, and they know they can come back to me if they're having issues. And that's one of the biggest things that I want everyone to know that works for me is, hey, if you're having trouble, just come to me. We'll find a solution. I've really tried to build a reputation of solutions minded, right? And they try to empower people to not only find solutions, but also work toward continuous improvement. I really think we always have an opportunity to improve, even if they're just turning the knobs here and there. There's always an opportunity for continuous improvement. And I think that's what my staff or anyone that's worked for me would say. And probably the other thing they'd say is that I'm genuinely a family man and I'm very consistent. And that's important to me. When you have me, when I'm at home, the man I am at home is the same man I am at work, and consistency.
What about coming into a role following after someone with long-term incumbency, someone who you know well, and sounds like you revere. So what about that as an engine of? You want to be an engine of change or a directional shift, or take your own approach, or put your own thumbprint. Tell us about any thoughts you've given to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. You're spot on. Lynn gave me many opportunities, and that's why I'm here today. And he also gave me, I could see what success looked like, right? I had an example in front of me, a model in front of me. But the challenges that we faced over the last 20 years aren't going to be the same as the challenges we face over the next 20 years. Now, we can take the way we address those challenges over the last 20 years, and we can apply those learnings or those solutions or the methodology behind how we solve those challenges over the next 20 years. And so, I see myself really just as a builder, building off of what's already been built. There's a strong foundation there. I do want to mention, I look at the DMR staff. It's an extremely talented staff. Extremely technically talented. They're dedicated employees. And so, to be able to step into that role and lead that team, I'd say work with that team would just be a pure honor, but also challenge them and see where there's things that we can improve as an organization. We're stepping into a time we have, as I mentioned, there's about 40 field staff. The way that field staff, and I get the kind of privilege, I guess, to understand what that field staff does on a daily basis and how that interaction comes back to basically the headquarters in Bismarck. I think we have a real opportunity to be innovative with the way we're inspecting well sites, our day-to-day operations in the field, and how that information is fed back to the headquarters for more immediate response. And just working through, I think there's some real opportunity for to work with some of the newest technologies within the agency. And I think that'll get people very excited. I know it has in the past. I know we use LiDAR and different drone technologies to not only in oil and gas inspection, but also in mapping landslide areas. I look at the mapping of landslides that the Geological Survey does as almost protecting the state infrastructure. There was Ash Coulee Creek, which was a landslide failure that severed the pipe. It's a terrible incident. It caused oil to get into that creek. Well, I was probably right around when we were developing that pipeline program. Again, if we were able to spot that potential landslide with some of the technology we're using today to map all of our landslides, we're continuing to look at critical minerals in our coal reserves. We have a great opportunity. A lot of people don't understand North Dakota has 800-year supply of lignite coal. We can be not only using that coal for baseload energy, capturing the CO2, sending that CO2 to the oil fields in the future, but also we can be expanding the state's mineral resource development with rare earth minerals. And then what we're going to see, I think, in the near term is what we're going to do with gas production and real opportunity to hopefully attract, I think a petrochemical company, bring more investment to the state. So we're going to be, the Department of Mineral Resources is just going to expand what we're already doing to find solutions to the future challenges. But we can look back, see some of the challenges we faced. I think gas capture is like a phenomenal story on how we address that with industry and government. The commission put together goals, and the Oil and Gas Division implemented that through the permitting process, through stipulations on a permit. Right, and that's how that was implemented, working closely with industry to make sure that they were able to do that. Again, setting achievable standards, achievable regulations. But we can learn from what was able to be accomplished the last 20, 26 years, and we can apply that to some of the new challenges we face. And then some of the new challenges we face, we may not. We may have to be creative in how we face those challenges. But I have full confidence, not only I have full confidence with that current staff and the talent that we have there, with working with the Industrial Commission, working with our legislature, working with their industry, working with the ERC and other research organizations, we'll be able to address those challenges.
Thanks.
To piggyback off from that a little bit, or at least down this road. within organizations and companies, they're pretty low profile. Rarely is there any great visibility. This particular role with the executive director is highly visible. It's a lot of external communications with the public, with the media, with industry stakeholders. What experience do you have that you believe prepares you for a lot of those public speaking events and dealing with the public and with the media? Give me an example of some of your communication skills.
Absolutely. First, I'd say that's my strength, communication. I've had tremendous opportunity really dating back to 2011, and it's only increased in terms of presenting to a variety of audiences. So everywhere from presenting to a highly technical audience to presenting to, a landowner groups or state legislators, to presenting to clients or an industry partner, an industry client, all the way through, attending town hall meetings where it's landowners just wanting to understand, what's going on and understanding the work that we're doing. I've presented to the Northwest landowners at their annual meeting. I think that must have been somewhere around 2015. So definitely have interacted with that group. I have been working on taking media requests really since I started doing CCS and then also the pipeline program. And today at the ERC, I've also interviewed with the media throughout there, and had an opportunity to learn specifically from Lynn. Now I don't know that I'll be able to handle the media like he did. I think he gave like the right quotes at the right time. I think he even gave the headlines sometimes with the way he managed that. But I'll certainly be working hard toward that. But I think the most important thing when it comes to external communications, whether it be to variety of audiences like our legislature or our landowners, or even our industry, and then the media, I think it's, one thing I'll be working, if I'm selected, one thing I'll be working really hard toward is making sure that I represent these three commissioners as I do that. That's a really important thing that I'll be, if I am selected, I'll be very diligent to make sure that when I speak, it's not just representing the Department of Mineral Resources, it's representing the Industrial Commission as well, and making sure, I'm not trying to downplay that. I think it's going to be something that I'm going to work hard toward for as a challenge, but I feel confident that I'll be able to do that. And ultimately gain the three commissioners' trust in having me be able to be out front facing, speaking about the work that we do together.
Were you ever involved in hearings, taking testimony, or when you're in the private sector, were you providing testimony at hearings?
Absolutely, both sides of the table, sir. So when I was with the Oil and Gas Division, I was sitting on the side where I was cross-examining witnesses, and then with my position actually started with the EERC. I've been in front of the Oil and Gas Division staff providing testimony on behalf of our industry clients, and then also I've testified before the Administrative Rules Committee, the Energy Development and Transmission Committee in North Dakota. I've testified before committees in Minnesota during their legislative session, and I work closely with the Alaskans when they were they're actually very successful this last year in setting up their CCS legal framework. And I testified 2 years in a row with the Alaska legislature.
Okay, thank you.
From your experience, Bree and DMR, that part of Lynn's job sometimes was not just a yes or no at the end of a hearing. It might have resulted in a yes or no by the time it got to a vote to us, but then that's when the work began to try to find a collaborative solution between the various industry partners and various stakeholders. Across your work, do you have examples of conflict resolution, specific examples that you want to share and in your approach to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, very much when there is a conflict, or I'm maybe using the term challenge, when there's something that's challenging in front of me, I tend to look at those as, there's got to be a solution. That's my mindset going into anything is hey, let's work hard to find a solution. In this particular role, there's several different ways to have a solution to, say, an issue. I think back to when I was administering the state's Class 2 UIC program, and we were having filter sock issues in the state, if you recall that. So illegal disposal or dumping of filter socks. I was actually calling around talking to the landfills in Western North Dakota, the managers of the landfills, because they were dealing with this issue. We're actually, it was almost like trying to be hidden as they were trying to get filter socks into, because there was no way to properly dispose of them specifically in North Dakota at the time. It was a TNORM issue. And so the way we addressed that was an internal solution. We stipulated permits moving forward, and we sent out a letter requiring all saltwater disposals were to have a specific container, closed leak-proof container to dispose of filter socks. That's certainly one challenge that can be dealt with internally through just a simple, almost policy move, right? I talked a little bit about the challenges that the state was facing, and it was high profile. There was a lot of concern around leaking pipelines, where slow undetected leaks, where the operators of the pipeline and the operators of the production facilities as well as did not know that salt water was leaking, and it was discovered by a landowner typically in those instances. Now that took more aggressive approach, right? Our legislature had to act, that had to be followed by regulations. But within that, what we saw was leveraging the EERC's industry focus, EERC bringing industry into the same room with government, with regulator, and trying to find that solution, which ultimately led to rulemaking and establishment of a regulatory program. I probably can think of a few other examples, but I've already mentioned, flaring, and I think the great success story we've had in North Dakota. One thing that I think about in 2011, when I was inspector, that year we had record rainfall in the western part of the state within the Missouri Basin. And at that time, oil and gas industry was allowed to have, basically open reserve pits for reserve fluids and cuttings. And we were having issues with that, and those pits were overflowing because there was just phenomenal rainfall. Today, there's a regulation in place that prohibits those types of pits. So I've been able to see the challenges that we faced and the different types of solutions. Obviously, it's not always jumping right into rulemaking and writing regs. My strength would be working within the framework that's already in place. Gas storage was one of them. I was at kind of the front end of the gas storage when that was being considered. I wrote the policy behind it. We didn't want to go into rulemaking right away, so we wrote a policy on how to permit gas storage. Now, obviously, that's evolved. I did some of the research work that led into the 2021 legislature, where there was gas storage section of the Century Code established. And rulemaking established from that. So we have the frameworks in place to store gas in depleted oil reservoirs, store hydrogen and gas in salt caverns, and then also in saline formations.
Thank you.
Questions that I have. As you were coming here, do you have an area that as you look forward that you would you need to work on? You're really going to have to give more attention to either personally or in the role.
Ole and Lena jokes. I think Lynn would be very disappointed in me if I told an Ole and Lena joke. So I'm working on that. No, sorry. In all seriousness, what I can say is, on a personal level, I am 100% confident that I'm prepared for this. In terms of my personal life, my marriage, my family, where I'm at with them. One thing that I can see coming into is this would be whoever the next director is, if I'm chosen, it would be my first time navigating the legislature from that perspective. So really, I'd really be working toward that. challenge. And that's really one of the things that I see. And again, we've talked about the public facing component of this and always being ready to answer any questions from the media, any questions from legislators. That's something that I'll be working closely with the leadership at the Department of Mineral Resources, that staff, to make sure I understand the full picture of everything we're doing.
That's what I have.
Commissioner?
Maybe you can cite an example, but I'll set it up first. If you were the lead, or if you were the executive director of DMR, and you had previous employers, companies, friends, anybody in the industry coming to you and wanting you to do something, and it was conflicting with our policies, our rules, regulations, and laws, how would you deal with that? And I guess, do you have an example where you dealt with tough situations and had tough conversations? Because virtually, you're going to have to tell them no. But I guess that would be up to you, whether you told them no or not, but some way you'd have to communicate that. Do you have an example of how you've dealt with anything in the past like that?
I do. Before I give an example, what I would like to say is, first of all, I'm a man of conviction. Second of all, I'm a man of integrity, and so I understand that there's a confidentiality component to the Department of Mineral Resources, but I also understand that there is a lead by example component that I would not even entertain. That now I would go into it thoughtful to try to understand exactly what's being asked of me. I may have to ask several questions to make sure I'm clearly understanding what's being asked of me. Now I'm speaking in a general sense. Now, with my previous role, I think specifically about the pipeline program that I managed. As I mentioned, in 2013, the legislature gave that initial jolt of authority to the Oil and Gas Division, and it was to collect GIS shape files for the location of gathering systems, and that's confidential and to be held in a confidential database. I mean, that was what the law said or says. And certainly in that role, I was asked for that information. I was asked for the location of pipelines, and we had to uphold that. No, this is confidential. Now there'd be certain instances where we'd be asked certain questions, and we would make sure as a team that we were comfortable with the response. And so there's one component probably where if it's directly something that I would want to handle directly, or maybe I would want to consult with my team to make sure that we were all unified in terms of the response. So depending on how the question's asked or what exactly is being asked. And then lastly, what I'd say to that is, I work at the EERC, and one of our core values is integrity. And absolutely, when we have a reputation at the EERC that I think is world class. And we got that reputation by upholding the integrity of the work that we do. It's an interesting thing because you get behind some of these projects that are in front of you and you get excited about them, but you're also doing science, and the results are the results, the facts are the facts. And so we need to be able to hold up the integrity of the organization. And if you're able to do that, it's only for the good. So
did you have a situation where someone asked you to do something even within your current position, maybe tweaking the data a little bit so they had a different outcome? I mean, how, not only, I get that you have convictions, but sometimes it's in how you deal with things. I've been asked to do things and just had to be diplomatic or straightforward about, it's probably not going to happen. But I was just wondering, do you have some examples? Because part of what you come down here is there's a compliance aspect to this job and an enforcement aspect. Maybe you haven't had a chance to give that any thought, but that's why I'm looking for, it's kind of a complex answer, but I'm still trying to vet it out.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're asking. So in terms of those two things, compliance versus enforcement, and what I look at is implementation. And within that, there's an interpretation component.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's certainly one of my, I mean, that's what I'm bringing to the table right now. That's got to be one of my strengths, is understanding the framework enough to understand if it's a cut and dry answer, or if there's a gray area that we need to work in, or, you know, to specifically address some sort of issue or question. But at the same time, not compromising the integrity, not going beyond what that lane allows you to go beyond in terms of the frameworks. I would have access to again, another talented staff to work with. I have access to the Attorney General's office in terms of an assistant attorney general if I had legal questions on what we could do. And I understand that component of the DMR, and I would work diligently to ensure that I didn't compromise the integrity of the agency, but also very much looking to work within that framework, know that framework like the back of my hand, to help guide and maybe answer a direct question with a direct answer, or have a discussion on how or if there's an opportunity to work there. I think I addressed your question in a very general sense, but
Yeah, that's continue.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No, I thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for answering my questions.
Kevin,
Appreciate the sincerity.
thank you, Commissioners. Kevin, any closing comments for us?
Well, what I'd like to leave you with is very much, I come at things in terms of solution minded. I like the way, from what I've learned in North Dakota, the way the state operates in terms of its approach to regulation, with a science-based, solutions-based approach. We regulate smart regulations, right? We regulate if we need to address challenges that we're facing. And I very much grasp that completely, and can continue to build on the legacy that's been left for me. If I'm given this opportunity, I see this really as my opportunity to impact North Dakota immediately, but also for those future generations, and bring a level of consistency to this position as there's this change that's taking place, and ultimately regulatory certainty. I mean, that's something that I got to learn very early on, is the need for regulatory certainty. And I've gone around the country and I've talked to other states about that. I've developed peer relationships across the country, where we want to provide the industry the certainty it needs to invest in our state, regulate in a way that is very much solutions minded or science based. And so that's very much, I think, what I bring to the table. And I understand kind of the partnership component of North Dakota, and the government and the industry and academia, ERC, and the research component, and how those have worked together, I believe, for good, and for where we are today. And I look forward to working, really in that arena for the rest of my career here in North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota is where I'm making my career. And so very excited about the future of the state. And I just appreciate to be able to be here, to be able to share my experience, share my heart on what I've been working toward, and today being here and be able to walk through all that is a huge accomplishment for me. So thank you very much.
Well, again, congratulations on being one of the two finalists. And,
Sure.
And on behalf of the commission, thanks for your important work that you've done at DMR earlier in your career. And thanks for coming back to North Dakota and joining ERC and all the contributions you're making there. It's great to have you back in the state.
Thank you.
And the search committee and the fellow commissioners for the good interviews. I think we're, and I'll just lead off and make it simple where I'm at. I feel like we've got two strong candidates here that are very different. One who's got a lot of experience on the regulation side. The other one's got great experience on the private sector side. And I feel like that I don't have the information to make a decision between those two today. And I'll make a comparison to BND. BND, we had a similar process just recently where we had an internal candidate and external candidate, but the three of us get to meet every month with the top 5 to 6 Bank of North Dakota leaders. And other than the exception of, Mark being here as an in serving in the interim, Bruce before that with Lynn, I don't have a good sense of the rest of DMR. So, and as someone who's been involved in a lot of leadership searches in my life, I never feel like I can make a decision about the leader without the context of, where's the state of the organization and,
As well.
This call is being recorded.
Commissioner.
Technical issue with the mics.
Okay,
Oh,
Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, so I agree. Both strong candidates. There are some differences and we have I went through their information and now there's some more information to kind of add to that. The interview certainly provided some insight. It actually made it tougher. So I need some time to just dwell on it and think about it. And I agree, if we came back in the next 10 days or so, I don't care, somewhere between 7 days and 2 weeks. After I found a comfort level with this, I got a lot of stuff to do in the next couple of days. So pouring through these materials coming into this weekend, and I'll be better prepared in the future to probably make a decision.
Okay,
So I would second that.
motion and second. Any other comments or questions?
No, I think great candidates. They
Thanks
both
to the
serve
committee.
North Dakota well. It's just a matter of picking one now.
Yeah, and I think both have been successful in their careers. Both will be successful in the future. I think what's missing for me is not, do we have strong candidates? It's what are the exact needs of the agency right now? And I'll even throw one other example out just for public discussion. In the Water Commission, you and I remember we had this in the Water Commission because we were bound by law to have the head of DMR or now the new initials, State Water Commission. Now it's SWC, I guess, State Water Commission. We were bound that the leader had to also be an engineer and had to be the state engineer, and they had to do both those roles. And we split those two apart, and then we were able to get someone who had great leadership qualities and have somebody who was the professional engineer to actually be the state engineer. That's been a big leap forward for us in capacity because, as Ag Commissioner would know, having sat on that board longer than anyone else on that board, I mean, we went from very small water allocations and projects when you began 14 years ago, and now it's hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Just on our side, the state side, plus more with the Fed, and just the scope and the scale had changed so much. And I don't know how old this requirement is from the legislature that the head of DMR is also the head of the oil and gas division. And I understand why that was there, but we might be in the spot where we do not have enough leadership roles defined, because there was part of me, which is, man, why wouldn't we get both these guys going? If there was a way to do it, because if you're trying to build the industry we're building, we need leadership capacity and we need technical expertise, and we need national, viewpoints from having worked in other basins. I mean, we need all of it. We need all of what they had. But right now we're in this thing where there's only one role on paper. We can't fix that necessarily now without a change in legislation, but I'm almost, ready to ask the Industrial Commission as another project, let's think about what drafting that would be like, because I think we've got broad powers as the Industrial Commission to help pick the leadership for that. But, can we unleash a constraint and create an opportunity by creating an opportunity for more leadership positions within the agency? Because it's just so important. I mean, this role is as important as any decision that we're going to make on this commission this year right now, because of its importance to that industry to us. So that's me thinking about how organizations are shaped and led, and we may have a constraint that was designed for an earlier time. Okay, well, we got a motion and a second. If nothing else, we'll call for the vote.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Okay, so we'll reconvene at, Karen will find a time scheduling that works with all three of our offices sometime in the next 7 to 10 days. And you've got, Karen, a set of things that I'm interested in. I'd ask you to survey these guys separately and see what other information that they may want to have so we can come back with a full report in public in terms of what we're looking for. Okay, but again, congratulations to the search committee and again, gratitude to our two finalist candidates for got two strong candidates, and that's a good position to be in for the state of North Dakota right now. So, okay, that brings us to Mark. All right, interim, thanks for joining us, and we're going to jump into item 3, which is DMR report.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
So this is the quarterly report for the oil and gas division from the first quarter. It was scheduled to be held last month, but that got pushed off due to scheduling conflicts. So I'm here to present it today. So that's why you see the 26 date at the top. On the first page are some statistics for the last 5 quarters. Top one, you can see we have received 360 permit applications first quarter. That's up a little bit. Rigs are getting more efficient. We need to find ways to get more permits out. First quarter, you can see we issued 205 permits, which is about on average about a week's worth, maybe down from the first quarter of 2023. The drilling rig count has been very consistent over the last 4 quarters, right in that 40 rig range. Well counts, of course, every month it goes up. We're putting more wells on production. We had 250 completions in the first quarter. Bear in mind, during the winter months, fracking is a little more challenging during those times. We have about 310 wells waiting in completion. We estimate that's what our new normal is going to be. That's just a matter of getting the wells drilled and then getting them on production. The quarter average 1.194 million barrels of oil a day. Again, that's in a winter quarter. That's be expected. Our gas capture in the Bakken is 95%, which is excellent. Prices, an average 69, almost $70 for the quarter. That's less than what it is today. Today's numbers are in that $72.32 range. Inspections. We had a lot of inspections in the first quarter. It's a very strong number. I don't know what it is about our inspectors out there who like to get out and do inspections in the wintertime, but hats off to them. We're working on 12 complaints right now. I'll report on those here in a minute. And at the bottom, you see a tally of our funds, and those funds are all very strong. Moving on to the next page, the gas graph. See that our GOR is still increasing, but it's down a little bit. That's due to the Tier 2 geology. The GORs are not as high in those areas. The bottom red line is the flared volume. That's very low at 170 million cubic feet. Converse of that is the gas captured on the next slide. As you can see, we're very strong for a matter of years now, going on over almost 3 years. We're very strong today at 95% gas capture. Brief update on our gas processing update meetings. We hold these meetings with gas gatherers out there every year. We've held 2 so far this year. I highlighted those in yellow, 1 in May and 1 in June. I would point out on the Petro Hunt, the second one, they have their Little Knife gas plant, but they also have production up in the North Charleston area on the south side of the lake. And it's very difficult to get gas out of there. It's very steep trying to get that gas out of those low areas. But they have 1 loop extension in 2024 that's planned, and hopefully another one in 2025 that should greatly reduce the gas that's flared in that North Charleston area. They do employ mobile recovery units on. They have 11 units running on 7 pads. take advantage of some of that gas that they're flaring. The other ones are just the same as what was on my last quarter report. Next slide is just Justin Craig says natural gas processing capacity. It doesn't change much. We still expect these numbers to possibly double by the mid-30s. So gas gathering and processing is going to be an ongoing challenge for the state. Next slide, we had no permits issued in the drilling permit review policy areas, those special areas that the commission set up previously. And lastly, the complaints, like I said, there's 12 of them. I highlighted, it's just a running tally. I put in bold, underline, new developments. North Range Resources has a few wells. We're dealing with them on. They have a party that might be interested in purchasing those wells. So we're working through those challenges with the legal obligations that are tied to those wells at the point. No Energy, we had an agreement with the operator to take the equipment, actually paid us for it. And they're still tubing in the well, and we're going to, under that same contract, we're going to offer them that tubing once we pull it out of the well to plug the well. AAA, we issued orders in April confiscating those wells. Nothing real, still working through these other ones. And on the last page, we have 3 new ones. And those are in the process of, we've sent out the complaints, they've responded, and we have changed a little bit our standard operating procedures. We'll actually point out the elephant in the room. When we send out the complaint, we send a request, say, hey, if you want to negotiate, let's get this started so we can work through these problems and get them behind us. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark?
So, fine.
Great, thank you.
Mark? You're welcome. See ya.
Afternoon.
Governor,
There's one more item.
We
we
got-
still
okay.
have one item.
Okay, all right.
You can join us.
3B.
So, Governor, Commission members, we're asking your authority to contract with Lynn Helm for professional consulting services. So when Lynn retired, he did offer to come back part-time to consult the DMR, help them through the transition. The services he'd be providing would include advising staff on their administrative caseload, some of their very technical matters before them related to DMR cases that Lynn's expertise would really help guide them through that process during this transition, helping the staff execute their final orders, provide recommendations related to their open administrative cases, and other technical expertise as needed from the DMR staff to help them through this transition. I would recommend one change to your motion if you so choose to move forward. In your motion, we did write at a minimum through September 1st, 2024. Reason was that we thought we were going to propose that as a start date for the next director. We didn't want that next director to feel like they had to use Lynn, but leave the option open. But we felt if we had a date set in there, then the director would have kind of an out if they chose a different path. I would recommend that if you were to move forward with this motion, that you would just say at a minimum through the start date of the next director.
But at a minimum.
Okay, so given that Lynn has a great deal of institutional knowledge and certainly understands how we've been working through some issues, I would move the motion with it reflecting until the new executive director's start date exists. So
Yeah, at a minimum.
at a minimum.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll second the motion, but I have a couple of questions. Does the motion in this process contemplate discussions that have been had with my office, specifically with the chief deputy,
on some things that they wanted to go through on this, and that's encompassed in this timeframe.
Yes, that's true. So one thing I would note that we discussed is when we say contract with, like, as a verb, of course, but does this mean a contract like as a independent contractor, or does it mean a temporary employee? We haven't had in-depth discussions with Lynn yet. We don't know if it would be advantageous for him to be a temp employee or a contract. So we would work with the Attorney General's office on that when that time comes.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
To figure out the form of engagement that would be the best for Lynn and the state. Okay. Okay, good clarification. Thank you. Any other questions? Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Thank you, team. Thank you, Lynn. We're now back to the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Keith Peach. I am the CEO of the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, and I'm here today on behalf of the Insurance Commissioner to present the 2024 reinsurance recommendation for the Fire and Tornado Fund. The Fire and Tornado Fund provides property and business personal property coverage to 1,174 state and local governmental entities. It currently insures $22.8 billion worth of property. The North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund is a member-owned nonprofit corporation that provides liability, auto, and equipment coverage to the local governmental entities in North Dakota. Since 2019, North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund has been administering the Fire and Tornado Fund under contract with the Insurance Commissioner. The North Dakota Century Code requires the Insurance Commissioner to obtain excess loss reinsurance for the Fire and Tornado Fund with the Industrial Commission's approval. The current shared and layered program, which was approved last year, and the first time that this type of program was utilized, as based on a TIV of $22.5 billion, or excuse me, $21.5 billion. The reason we moved to this was the single carrier that was prior on the reinsurance made some terms and condition changes to the reinsurance treaty, resulting in two buildings being non-reinsured, where we had to go find separate coverage for those two properties.
And this was NDSU's coal plant and EERC.
Correct, Governor.
Can you, I know that I never fully understood last year, but can we understand this year why EERC was somehow viewed as a threat from a,
We did not.
was it the word coal, four-letter word?
I couldn't tell you, Governor. We, this year, we gave the opportunity for travelers to.
This is insuring for fire and tornado, right?
Correct.
And the ERC buildings are in the middle of the UND campus, which they're happy to insure,
All of the rest of them, yes.
but not that one.
But not that one. And again, this year, we reached out to travelers to see if they would be interested in providing a quote, and again, declined to provide a quote unless those buildings were outside of the treaty. So the quote that we obtained this year was the shared and layered approach. Again, the program was heavily oversubscribed, indicating that the reinsurance market was happy to be part of it, where there were more reinsurers wanting to be part of it, ultimately driving down the overall rate by 0.32% to that 0.0349 per 100 of TIV. The deposit that's noted on there actually decreased yesterday afternoon, and I can explain that in a couple of slides here. But this quote covers all property within the Fire and Tornado Fund and matches the Fire and Tornado Fund's forms for coverage, so there's no gap in coverage. As a visual representation of what that structure looks like, this shows the reinsurers that are part of the structure and how much of each layer that they are taking for the risk. dive a little bit deeper into how that is calculated out. Look at this slide. The change that occurred was within the 150 million excess of 100 million. RSUI, the way that they had structured their quote resulted in taxes and fees being required on it. They removed those yesterday afternoon. So the actual quote for this is $7,811,220. If you look at that very bottom row under total costs, right in the middle. And that is based on the TIV that was presented to them back in April when we sent the numbers to them. So that will increase. As I mentioned earlier, we're at 22.8 billion right now. Over the last several months, we've increased the TIV by 400 million.
Is that because of new construction that the universities are doing, or it's a combination of that plus what local subs are doing, or?
Correct, Governor. So the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund staff will go out, do appraisals on those properties and make recommendations to increase values of buildings that might be underinsured or in the recommended that they're underinsured and they need to be increased. So there's that, and then just general policy renewals. We've partnered with agents across the state to help on the political subdivision side to do those appraisals as well, to make sure that the property values are being maintained appropriately. And that also contributes to the reinsurers being willing to participate within the fund, is the management of it and making sure that there aren't significant numbers of underinsured buildings as the exposure is not correct then.
Did we have any claims against this last year?
We did not.
How many years have we gone without a claim?
Since 2016, when there was a hailstorm in the Killdeer area, Manning, Killdeer. And that one barely, the terms of that treaty were different. So I think there was a $1 million attachment point, whereas this is $2 million now. But if it was under the current terms of the treaty, it barely would have breached it. Last year, we were close on one claim that was a collapse at a middle school here in Bismarck, which was $1.5 million total. And other than that, we haven't had anything come close to it.
But our loss history is wonderful. And yet we struggled to get them to write everything in the state. Everything that we want.
Okay, yes, Commissioner. With the layer and with the structure that we have now, look at the next slide here. Providing the benefits of this structure, what it ultimately does is it gives control to the Fire and Tornado Fund, where a single reinsurer can't dictate terms like they did in 2022. So if there is a reinsurer that is uncomfortable with the risks that are involved, they're easily replaced. As the reinsurance broker that put the program together for the fund approached hundreds of reinsurers across the world, essentially, including Lloyd's of London. So it's a lot of it is built on those relationships that allow the placement to happen and the overall reduction in the rate per 100 of TIV. The recommendation that I have before is accepting the shared and layered program structure. The rate of 0.0349 per 100 is, as I said, it's lower than last year, so it's a benefit.
Yep.
And it has worked out. The reinsurers have been fantastic to work with. The broker has been fantastic to work with, and this is a very positive thing for the fund. Reinsurance will continue to be a large portion of the fund's costs just because of the amount of exposure. Look at the Capitol Complex, 11 universities and colleges across the state, that concentration of risk that is in there. Attorney General, you mentioned the hail that happened yesterday. That'll take some time to figure out, but if it's going to hail again tonight, obviously there's a risk for the Bismarck area. I checked this morning as to how many properties are within the Bismarck area, and there's 2,014, I believe, with a little over $3 billion of TIV. And that is just in Bismarck, Mandan. So that is my recommendation.
So Keith, couple things. The number I saw in here was 7,811,000, and then this one says 7,813,000 and some change. Is it the 813,000 one that's correct?
It is the 811.
The 800, that's
That
what I
was,
saw.
that was
yeah.
the change that happened yesterday afternoon
Okay,
when RSUI restructured how they were presenting the quote to remove those taxes and fees of $2,074.
good.
Commissioner, I drafted that motion a couple days ago.
So, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that if I said it,
We'll get it.
our attorney, he just writes me to make sure everything is correct. So,
Let's make sure we get a motion before they revise anything else. Revisions are.
Good attention to detail there, Commissioner, but then your motion is going to be revised to have $7,811,220.
yes,
Okay.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
And I think our director has it there. My next question, it's a lot easier.
Yes, Commissioner.
Is this the Valley City Bridge?
I would actually look to our marketing and communication.
That's what I thought. We don't insure it, by the way. That's BNSF.
Yeah, not ours.
That's why they're the Highliners.
Yeah. I move the motion to reflect the new price.
Second.
We have a motion is second. As a comment, I just want to thank Keith and your team. You introduced a slide last year, the one with the multicolored with the thing. I mean, this makes a challenging data fill chart very explainable. And again, congratulations on the new approach last year, and congratulations on getting a lower rate this year.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Planner,
Yes. Motion carries. Other North Dakota Reserve Fund business? No?
I do not have anything else.
What's the cash balance in the fund?
I don't have that exact number.
Can you round?
I would round out probably a little under 14 million
Where's the cash held when it's sitting in there?
with the state of North Dakota and the investments.
But is it in which group, or is it BND or SIB or,
I don't know exactly.
we'll find, you'll find out and get back to us.
Absolutely.
We ask everybody where the cash is. We're in the middle of a cash management study.
Absolutely.
And while you're at it, Karen, on that one, can we, on reserve funds that Mark had on the bottom of, is with the new, might be in the new record, 32 million in the abandoned well restoration fund, 183 million in the surety bond fund. Can we find out where all that cash is being held?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like, it gets even more interesting.
it sure does.
Speaking of interesting, here she is, North Dakota Public Finance Agency, Deanne. Celebrating. We have a very happy bison behind you.
I thought I'd make it interesting for you.
Yeah, thank you. We have a number of things for consideration. Go ahead and jump in on number one, which I think is McLean Sheridan Rural Water.
Yes, McLean Sheridan Rural Water has applied for a $8,159,000 loan. They're eligible for $7,199,000 of loan forgiveness. This project is going to add a second treatment train to their plant, their water treatment plant, and double the treatment plant capacity. They're also going to upgrade nearly all of their process pipe and their electrical components. And then they're also going to add office space and garage space. They are also, this is a getting some Department of Water Resource cost share. So this total project is $9,599,000. They've requested a 30-year loan term and will repay this with their water user fees. And after that loan forgiveness, their bond payment will be $41,000 per year for an almost $10 million project. And based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
Second.
Motion second. Deanne, on the, for those that are listening in, maybe just explain, I mean, when you say they follow the requirements with these numbers, how do they, what's the formula that gives them the $7 million of loan forgiveness? Question one. And what is two is, where are these dollars all coming from? And is part of this a surge in federal money being shoved out towards water systems?
Sure. So I've got 31 minutes until the state blows up my computer to update something. So I'll try not to take too long, but Java has to be updated, I see here. So the drinking water SRF request was for $8,159,000, and DEQ ranks all of the projects. And then this project was eligible for the Bill Emerging Contaminants funding. Any of the emerging contaminants funding could only fund things that are on the emerging contaminants list. So EPA has a list, and I know PFOS, PFOA, and manganese are on that list. And in North Dakota, manganese is the main contaminant that is been eligible for the emerging contaminants funding on the drinking water side. And so McLean Sheridan was a water district that ranked high enough on the intended use plan. And so they were eligible for this funding. And so the bill funding provides funding for 5 years of emerging contaminants funding, and that has to all be given away as loan forgiveness. So the EPA will give us the grant money for that, and we have to give that all as loan forgiveness. We are partnering that with our regular grant money and providing up to 75% loan forgiveness. They're also getting Department of Water Resource cost share. So the max the state will go between the loan forgiveness and the cost share would be up to 90%. So it's quite a nice package for McLean Sheridan to be able to have a 10% loan on this project. And I think I answered your questions, but I might have missed a question in there.
Remind us the federal program, when you say BIL, BIL stands for?
Bipartisan Infrastructure Law.
Which, for those listening, the grant money in EPA that Deanne is administering, like under this contaminant thing, is 3 times larger than what the budget for the EPA is. I mean, this is federal spending at unprecedented levels, and they're shoving the stuff out the door. Now, I know in North Dakota, when we got Deanne and we got DEQ, we got the Water Commission, that this money is going to be spent on a real project that actually meets the needs. But they're shoving out tens of billions of dollars around the country at a record pace, where even some of the people that pushed for this thing are saying, we don't know how we're going to possibly do it's a record amount of money, and then no money was appropriated for the auditing of the program. I mean, the opportunity for fraud and misuse around the country on this thing is just unbelievable. And then you get a community of 1,100 people that you get, $10 million project, 9 million of it's free federal, not free. I mean, we borrowed it from another country. We're not taxing and spending, we're borrowing and spending. But anyway, it's happy that we qualify, happy that we're administering it well. And I know it'll be monitored well, but I just had to share that.
I would say along those lines, what's sad about the situation, when they passed all these other bills or passed the bill along with some other programs, they made a bunch of grant dollars available and only about 20% actually goes towards the project. 80% goes to fund the NGO that's contracted to administer it.
Yep.
And there's, again, going back to your comment, there's no auditing of it. So it'll be years before we find out what actually happened, but it just shoves a lot of money out into communities and
Yep.
no real product is produced.
Okay. Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. Dickinson?
Dickinson is requesting $3,539,000. This project will also have loan forgiveness of $1,043,000. This is on the clean water side, and this project is eligible for, under the bill, bipartisan infrastructure law for the emerging contaminants. And this is a landfill project, and the reason that it is eligible under the Clean Water Program is it's a leachate. So it'll prevent the PFAS and PFOA from getting into the surrounding environment. So that's why it is eligible. And so the net loan will be $2,496,000. They've requested a 20-year loan term. They will repay this loan through their solid waste utility fee revenues. And they've also, as a secondary pledge, provided their city sales tax, their 0.5% city sales tax, and additionally pledged their gross production tax. And they will have an average annual payment of $146,000. So this basically has a primary pledge with 2 secondary pledges, a very solid security. And based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
So move.
Second. Motion is second. Any questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
The last item is a memo of the loans from the last 2 advisory committees that were below the $2 million threshold, that these loans were approved by the advisory. There was 1 clean water loan to the city of Richardson, and then 4 drinking water loans. They were made to the city of Rame, St. John, Taylor, and the city of Milner. And if you want me to go through them, I will gladly do that. If not, I can just answer any questions about any of those projects if you'd like, or however you want me to do it.
I don't think we need to go through each one, but I was, when I flipped through these earlier, Deanne, there's no, there must not, in the criteria, when they meet the criteria, there's nothing related to cost per person. I mean, I'm glad we include that, but some of these are $700 per person, $1,100 per person, up to $9,000. But then I noticed that Rame is $37,000 per person, but it still meets all the criteria.
Correct.
And is there, how do you think about that in your mind when you're approving these? Is there anything that strikes you as this is a lot of money per person for a? I mean, it's the same program, same qualifications, and one of them is $700 a person, and the other one's $37,000. I mean, I think taxpayers might look at all of us and go, how does that work?
You are correct. The communities have their voice in whether they want to move forward. They've got their city council. It's a local choice whether they want to bring these loans or want to apply for these loans. We're not forcing them to. Sometimes though, it is a matter of whether they can stay in compliance, whether their water and sanitary sewer systems are in compliance with the DEQ. That's again, if they can repay it, we move the loans forward.
Got it. And obviously, I mean, if we're replacing asbestos pipe, I mean, that's an important project, but it's just, I think, I don't know
Yeah.
what the right emotion is, whether it's, gratitude that we have a wealth as a nation to do these kinds of projects or exactly what the right,
Do we?
emotion is. Yeah, but maybe, but it's,
Maybe we don't.
but it's, we're glad we're getting the infrastructure in North Dakota up to fantastic levels. And it's great that these projects are able to go through, especially for these smaller communities where you just don't have the scale to do it. So,
And it comes out of the state revolving loan fund, correct? I mean, they pay it back.
Yes, they
It
do.
just costs them a lot of money. Yeah,
Yes, it does.
yeah. So it's our decision, and I guess if you like your water, or you have to comply with the law, you probably don't have much of a choice.
but the water, the DWR cost share is 3.7 million bucks too. So there is state money that's helping. Okay.
That is all I
Anything
have.
else?
That is it
And
for
you're out before your system got shut down.
Yes, 21 minutes to spare.
Okay. Feel free to send a note to NDIT and tell them that you'd be happy to have them do the update anytime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Versus during working hours during an NDIC meeting.
Yeah.
I encourage you to send that note.
Well, it took me by surprise when I saw that pop up. I was hoping that you'd get to me. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Bill,
Hi, Phil.
Bill?
how are you?
Doing good.
Any ideas going up today? I gave an interview on making you into a local hero.
Oh.
Talking about, the mail will follow in the weeks to come. Whole country. Talk about federal litigation.
On litigation, then I'll just do a quick update of the major developments since the last time we spoke. So the Northwest Landowners Pore Space case, argument on the summary judgment motions was June 28th. So that's with the judge and we're waiting for decision. And regardless of what the judge decides, I'm sure it's going to be appealed to the state Supreme Court. The next one on the list is the BLM's venting and flaring.
On that one, was there, in the end, I know they were always trying to find a plaintiff.
They were able to find one landowner who was part of a project and didn't consent to it, part of an amalgamation project.
But still gets paid the same as everybody else?
Correct.
Okay.
It'd be
The
pretty popular if he shuts them all down.
next litigation is our challenge to the BLM venting and flaring rule. That's where we're bringing that suit in the District of North Dakota. 4 other states are joining us. We had argument on the preliminary injunction middle of June, and we're waiting for the decision on that. The next one is the BLM's conservation rules, the one where they're defining non-use of lands as a use of lands under the statute. We're bringing that here in the District of North Dakota. Montana and Idaho joined us. We filed our complaint on June 21st, and then the feds moved to try to get the case out of North Dakota, and we'll be filing our opposition to that end of this week.
Utah, right?
Yeah, they're trying to move it to Utah,
Who's in with us on that one? You said Idaho and
Montana. The next one on the list is our lawsuit against NEPA's Phase 2 rules. So this rule is the largest overwrite of the NEPA regulations since the 70s when they were implemented. And NEPA touches anything that has a federal nexus. So any infrastructure development that gets federal financing, or if it requires a federal permit, any major development that has a federal nexus requires the NEPA process. And this rule injects a bunch of substantive policy goals of the current administration. So things like environmental justice, which have no statutory foundation, they're added as something that must be considered in a variety of ways. And if it's not adequately considered, someone can sue to stop the project. And that's just one example of many problems.
So along those that way, Phil, Chevron would not have, or the Chevron decision won't apply to this because those rules were set before that decision actually came about.
The decision getting rid of Chevron will be helpful in this case.
Okay.
It's, yeah,
Say again, one more time, you said about environmental justice was added as a,
it's a consideration that every federal agency must take into account when it's proposing any sort of major action or financing any sort of major action.
and do they define what environmental justice is?
They provide a very vague definition that could be contorted to whatever someone wants it to mean.
Interpretation.
Yeah,
Basically, it was a tool to stop anything.
that is one of our allegations in the complaint, yes. And that's 21 states are challenging that here in North Dakota.
We're leading on that one.
Us and Iowa. And Commissioner Goring and several agency heads have provided declarations attesting to the impact. Skipping one on the rule, the carbon rule, that's one where 27 states are challenging it. The DC, you may have seen it in the news, the DC Circuit denied the stay application on July 19th, which was a Friday, and on the following Tuesday, we had submitted an emergency application to the Supreme Court, and we are waiting for the Supreme Court's decision. We are cautiously optimistic that the Supreme Court will do the same thing. The last time the analog of this rule was issued back in 2016, the Supreme Court stepped in and stayed the rule when the DC Circuit denied the stay. So we are cautiously optimistic it'll do the same thing again, just given the profound impacts that this rule is going to have on the entire industry.
And that previous matter, you reminded me again today, Phil, was the first time that had ever been granted. That the Supreme Court never granted a stay, so this will be only the second. And although it's right in the same line, same vein, if they did it once, it's.
And what was the prior thing when they did it? What was
the Clean Power Plan?
That was the case that wound up with North Dakota and West Virginia versus the EPA.
Yeah, that was the one where EPA said they had the ability to direct the entire power generation industry to shift the percent that came from coal and make the percentage of energy come from other sources. Supreme Court said, EPA, you don't have the authority to restructure the entire power sector. So they've come around a different way this time. And to achieve the same ends, they've created a mandate that coal plants must have 90% CCS in place within a 7-year timeline. And if they don't, they have to be on a retirement track. And everyone has said this has not been demonstrated to be there's potential for CCS, but it's not going to get there that fast for the entire country.
Would be weird if EPA, none of them are elected, could actually decide a course which would de-electrify America and then cause us to lose the AI arms race with China and have an unelected agency be the one that could drive that. That would be.
That's what more than half the states in the country and basically everyone in the industry is telling the Supreme Court. So
Could any of those 27 states have, because there must be one or two that have a Democrat governor who would have joined us that is, to get us to 27. Maybe you can check back and get back to me on that one.
Oh, I could get you the list. I don't think any did, but I can confirm.
I think we've only got.
We've got 27 Republican AGs.
Okay, it's AGs, not governors. Okay, that's how you didn't get any Democrat AGs, but you got 20. There's more Republican AGs than there are Republican governors right now.
And I'm thinking there's almost 30 Republican governors, because when I look across, there isn't?
No, I mean, we got close, but we're falling back down. I think we're at 25 or 26 right now.
Okay, because my colleagues are, and some of them just act like Republicans. Maybe that's it.
So that's where that one.
Who's leading the EPA carbon rule?
West Virginia, but we're involved.
Okay.
Going back up.
They're navigating their thing with their Was there governors running for Senate and is the AG running for governor?
Yes.
And so then who is their Solicitor General still staying the same, or is that person running for AG, or what's the?
I don't believe their current Solicitor General is running for anything.
But they got somebody who's focused on.
Yes.
Okay.
Going back up one, the MATS rule. This is the one where North Dakota is leading 22 other states. We just filed our reply in support of a stay yesterday. So we're waiting for the DC Circuit's decision on that, which will probably be in the next couple of weeks. And then I believe the last one on the list is the EPA's methane rule. The 25 states are challenging that, led by Oklahoma and Texas. And the DC Circuit denied our stay motion on July 9th. So we'll be going forward to the next step of arguing on the merits.
Does the DC Circuit always deny on these things? I mean, is that a three or five? How many panel judges that?
It's 3 judges per panel. It's may not be the most friendly court.
Okay.
And those are all the major updates since the last time we spoke. The other ones on the bottom are still in progress or waiting for them to be finalized.
Did they ever talk about the science behind, like on the methane rule? You know what methane breaks down to? After it's in the atmosphere for 7 to 8 years, it breaks down to CO2 and water. It doesn't stick around forever. But I suppose CO2 might be the.
CO2 is deadly.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna respond to
Except for the things that need
that. I need it.
Except for the things that need it to live. Other than that, that's very good.
It's the new plants for CO2 lobby. It's coming over.
The head growers should be big CO2 proponents.
And that's all I have, gentlemen. Do you have questions?
On the last 3, anything on the federal regulatory, LM resource, or maybe those 3?
No major movements to report.
Okay. But didn't we on the DAPL? Didn't they extend they extended the timeline on that one?
I would have to confirm.
I thought they did till 2026.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that would, I think they kicked it beyond this fall's election for sure.
Okay. Do we have anything
No,
confidential that would be going into
I don't think so.
not on legal?
Doesn't have any secrets.
Okay, so do we not need to go into?
Not for legal.
Well, we still need to go for the other, not for legal.
Oh, we need it for the pipeline and bank. Okay, all right. Great. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks for engaging so heavily with the other states. They appreciate it, and we appreciate it.
Yeah,
too.
well,
That's been terrific.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Super
Phil, and
strong.
thank to the Attorney General. I mean, the leadership that we're showing across these cases are so important to all these other states and to the country. So
Wow.
it's great that we're on the front edge of this.
We appreciate it.
I do have a question for you because this has come up. And it's been some of our constituents that came forward because and I thought I answered it right, but I'm gonna ask you the same way. There's a constitutional right that protects people's rights. What happens when the majority vote for or approve or want a project, but the minority, 1, 2, or 49%, want to impose their will and stop something? Now, they have a constitutional right, and the courts have deemed it so that they are compensated properly. What gives them the right to stop a project if they're a minority?
Well, just generally speaking, in broad terms, they have a right to go through the eminent domain procedures, which for many things would give them a right to a jury trial, et cetera. That's part of what we're debating in the pore space case is whether the nature of pore space is different than, say, ownership of the surface. whether ownership of pore space is more like ownership of an interest in an oil and gas reservoir. If something is communal in nature, which is our argument in the pore space, there's the doctrine of correlative rights, which means you don't have to go through the eminent domain procedure. Whereas the other side is arguing and trying to convince the court that pore space is simply like surface estate, where if the state wants to make use of the surface estate and the owner doesn't want to, the state has to go through the eminent domain procedures, which gives them a jury trial right.
But a jury, they want a line from their property through the center of the earth.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can't, but if that were the case, wouldn't that become a precedent, which would blow up our ability to do pooling for oil and gas resources?
That's our argument. The other side's argument is that pore space is different than an oil and gas reservoir.
And different how?
Different in the sense that oil and gas is taken out. It's a movable resource, whereas pore space isn't. Our argument is they're similar because they exist as reservoirs. One person can't stop the use of it without affecting everybody else, which is different from your surface estate, where you could say you can't use my property, but the government could go around you. You can't do that with a pore space reservoir.
I like your position. I like the state's position.
Well, hopefully the courts agree.
Yeah.
Well, and that's because they're right in asking the question, and what would happen if they were precluded from recovering or getting some value out of, whether it's a pipeline or whatever, if they were providing an easement and all of a sudden they're told, no, it doesn't matter what the majority wants, it's the minority that don't want it. Who's going to compensate them if something were to go awry and they couldn't get it, even though it's the majority? And they're right. They questioned me about this and I said, yeah, you're not wrong. You have rights as the minority, but it doesn't mean that you should be able to stop something. Just like with zoning laws and everything else. Correct?
Yep, it's a question of process and what
It's
steps
just a
are required
process, okay.
if the public is going to use private property. It's a question of what process is required based on the nature of the private property.
Okay.
But along with Commissioner's question is, I mean, wasn't eminent domain invented in England 300-400 years ago to protect the rights of the majority for exactly
Yes.
the cases you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it was designed to not let one person in a democracy have power over the majority, the supermajority, or the 99.9% majority. It meant to protect everybody else, but
Yes.
still take care of that individual's rights. That was the change. It wasn't a bad thing. It's been conflated that it's about government takings. It's not about government takings. It's about protecting the rights of the majority.
And they ought to be happy we
And-
live in a republic, not a democracy.
Right.
In a democracy, they could just take you out as the loser and hang you. In a republic, we actually get to keep you alive and protect you.
Yep.
Bill, we're so close to being back on time before you started.
Yeah. My apologies
Just
to
say,
the
I have
attorney.
no idea. Those are really complicated.
But in the key phrase in all of that is with just compensation.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
because there is no, on this process, always ends up with just compensation.
Well, yeah, I didn't know this until I started this job. The number of people think that it just means the land gets taken, property right is infringed, and you're not compensated for it. The
You're
government just
always
takes it,
compensated, yeah.
takes it without.
Yeah, and just compensation can be solved through a variety of processes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
Quick,
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
run before another question.
okay, do we have the magic,
Oh, motion.
Do a motion?
Yeah.
right there?
Ah.
I think I hear one.
Oh, now we are going to executive.
Yes.
I move that under the authority of the North Dakota Century Code, section 6-09-35 and 44-04-18.4, 44-04-19.1, 44-04-19.2, Industrial Commission enter into an executive session for the purpose of pipeline authority and Bank North Dakota confidential business and attorney consultation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. The motion carries. Commission will move to meeting in executive session regarding pipeline authority confidential business pursuant to NDCC 44-04-18.4. Consider those items listed on the agenda. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, pipeline authority staff, and potential contract parties will participate in that executive session. After the pipeline authority executive session, the commission will meet in executive session regarding Bank of North Dakota confidential business pursuant to NDCC 6-09-35 and 44-04-19.1 to consider those items listed on the B&D agenda under B&D confidential business. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, the Department of Financial Institutions Commissioner and staff, and the B&D staff will participate in that executive session. Any formal action taken by the commission will occur after it reconvenes in open session. I remind the commission members and those present that the executive session discussions must be limited to the announced purposes, which is anticipated to last. In the first one, you've got 30 minutes for pipeline, and then we have an hour for B&D. So 90 minutes for the two. The executive session will begin in 2 minutes. The executive session ended at 7:15 p.m. Commission is reconvened in open session. During the Pipeline Authority executive session, the commission discussed confidential business related to the Pipeline Authority's capacity purchase program. There's no need for any official action to be taken now that we're back in open. During the Bank of North Dakota executive session, the commission discussed those items listed on the agenda under Bank of North Dakota confidential business. No formal action was taken during either executive session. There was it's not intermission when you take a recess. We had a recess. We had a recess for dinner in there, which extended the length of that executive session. But we did have separate recordings for both of those two individual sessions. But now we're back in regular session, and thanks to those on the governor's office team that helped feed us, and thanks for those that were patiently waiting out in the hallway to return. Our next executive action here is the next NDIC action is the State Energy Research Center. Reese, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Governor, Commissioners. Under your contract with the State Energy Research Center, you have a discretionary funding pool under Task 2. You receive $750,000 by IDM for discretionary studies, at your request. We do have a request to tap into those funds. Currently, this biennium, you've done it twice, once for a CO2 enhanced oil recovery forecast, and once to update North Dakota's grid resiliency plan. The request before you today is to authorize the remaining funding to conduct a joint study with the North Dakota Transmission Authority and the EERC to look into expanding and future-proofing North Dakota's electric grid in an evolving energy landscape, acknowledging that we have a significant demand coming our way with data centers. We're talking gigawatt scale demand, unprecedented in our state's history. Huge opportunity for our state as well. So the goal of this would be to develop an analytical framework to help our utilities and stakeholders and help the state prepare for that significant demand so we can capitalize on that opportunity.
We'll seek a motion on attachment 12.
Yeah. I move that we authorize $528,000 for the 2019-01, which would look at a study of expanding and future-proofing North Dakota's electrical grid in an evolving energy landscape.
Second.
A motion second. I would just say thank you, Claire. Thank you, Reese, for bringing this forward. In prior discussions, both in and outside of these meetings, we've talked about this unprecedented demand. It's happening, it's coming, and this will be dollars well spent to make sure that we're in a position. If we can have the right electrical production and the right grid, the economic development opportunities as the AI arms race arrives in North Dakota, it'd be a fantastic opportunity and an opportunity to help lower electric rates, not increase electric rates, lower electric rates for consumers at the same time we're we're building more capability. So with a hearty let's go, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
Just a comment, Governor, Commissioners, is I'm so excited about this project. It's, we had it started rolling with the transmission capacity study and working with Brian. See, we're able to utilize what we started and work together on this next phase. So it's awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Great.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Claire.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the oil and gas research program. Back to you, Reese.
Thank you, Governor, Commissioners.
It's under tab 13 for people that are.
Yes. Just starting with the finances for the oil and gas research program. Earlier this month, we held our round for the oil and gas research program. On page 2, you see this typical dashboard view of all of your industrial commission managed funds. So you can kind of picture where oil and gas fits into that. Page 3, diving deeper into your oil and gas research fund balance. I think the number you're really looking for today is 6.3 million available in the fund that you have available for the remainder of the biennium for new projects. Of course, this all comes from oil and gas extraction and production taxes. Cumulatively, you
Is this
grant
fully filled in, or is there more money that will
it
come into
is
this?
it is fully filled now.
Okay, all right.
The cumulative value has led to $530.5 million of private sector match that has been invested in North Dakota, thanks to your program. And then on the last few pages there, we have just a list of all of our active projects and where they're at their deliverables. To answer any questions on this before we move to your application.
Looks good.
No, good report.
So
Say
this
again one more time the number of private sector dollars that have been.
$530.5 million.
Over $539 has been leveraged.
Yes.
So it's these are 5 to 1 private sector, more than 5 to 1.
So before you for consideration today, we have one application. Really excited to present this one. I think it's very timely considering our discussions on some of the federal rulemakings, especially related to methane emissions. So this application would be for the second phase of a well site thief hatch methane detector. Thief hatches are the openings on the top of oil storage tanks on well sites. In phase 1, which you had already funded in a previous grant round, they developed a sensor, which you can see here on the screen on the left-hand side, that can be attached to the top of a thief hatch. It can detect methane detections. It's intrinsically safe, so it's not won't cause explosions. Phase 2 would be to take this a step further. Can we integrate machine learning and AI to actually quantify the amount of methane emissions? And knowing that EPA is moving toward a 5-minute increment for when they would like to detect methane emissions, that's the goal with this, is to make this an option for our industry. Right now, their options are sending a human being out there with a very expensive FLIR camera. Of course, that's just a snapshot in time. They can use satellite data, but once again, that's a snapshot in time. This would be a real solution and really be a great tool for our industry and set us apart for methane detection. Great example of how we can really work with industry using innovation instead of regulation.
And real time, fully automated.
Correct.
No human risk.
Correct.
Yep. So I would, I'd move the $450,000 for the project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions for Reese relative to this application? I guess my only one would be, this went through the normal process of, and what was the vote on the?
The vote was unanimous.
Across the entire, both the technical and the.
That's correct.
Okay.
How original though. They still use the word thief hatch. It's exactly what
I was expecting something a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like,
sexier.
yeah. Like
No,
a
I get
gas
it.
covering hat, but a thief hat.
Yeah.
That's where they used to steal it from.
But somebody's going to jail.
All right. Okay, we've got a, if there are no other questions, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries. Was our last element here, the Office of the Industrial Commission? Is that what we have left?
Yes.
Minutes?
Yep, meeting minutes, and I'm just noticing, I think, that the July 2nd meeting minutes did not get included in the packet, so we'll have to get those approved at the next meeting. I apologize for that.
I would move it all but the January 2nd minute meeting.
How about July?
July
July
2nd.
2nd.
Yeah, the June 26th were distributed ahead of time, so we have a motion to approve the June 26th minutes.
Second.
Second, any additions or corrections? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. Okay, next item is the 4% legislative salary increase.
yeah, so we just need approval to provide those increases to Deanne at Public Finance, Dave at Housing Finance, and Vance at the mill.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This motion is just for the leadership of those. Tell me about other industrial commission agencies or the people that work for them. Did those already apply? This is the second year of July 1, the legislative approved. Second year of a biennium was a 4% salary increase across the board. But there was some latitude for leaders to decide how to apply that. Was there not? Or was it-
Yes, so within each of these agencies, they would have the opportunity to make those decisions. Each one of these executives would make those decisions for their agencies. And then we would just be bringing to you the decision for the executives. The reason you're only seeing the three there, you would normally see the bank and DMR as well, but we just hired the new bank president and don't have the DMR executive director in place yet. So you're just seeing the three.
So they're allocating their 4% across. We're giving 4% to the executives. So that's what this motion is.
Correct.
Okay, but they've got the authority to do with their pool, their salary pool across there. Okay.
That's correct.
As long as it doesn't exceed average, correct? In other words, they could do 5% for some employees who are exceeding expectations and adjust accordingly.
Well, if they had it in their budget.
Yeah, but they couldn't exceed 4%
Total.
total.
Cumulative.
Yeah. Okay.
Or they can sort of make some equity changes too,
Yeah.
right? Not just
Yeah.
performance, but. Okay, all right. So, but these are for these three individuals is what this vote is for. Okay, we have the motion in a second.
Yes.
Okay, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. And motion carries. Is there any other industrial commission business?
I have one, and I just don't know how this gets applied, but how about yours? We used to always have to tell Carlene to bring her stuff forward. She'd wait, drag her feet.
we are doing kind of an assessment
Okay.
where all of the compensation levels are for the industrial commission admin office. So I'm working with Claire and the lieutenant governor, and Tom will be brought into that as well. So that group will be able to see the compensation level for the admin office, and then
You'll
a
work through that.
recommendation for my position. So
Okay.
almost done with that. We'll have it at the August meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, well, and thank you, fellow commissioners, for the, I think this is, since I've been here, this is the latest we've met into the evening. But thank you for the good work on both the governance and the hiring side of what we're doing. And the industrial commission staff, thanks always for the great prep for the meeting as we work through some very important topics. So with that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do think one time you and I had a 7:30